saw the meme. It was like you work 20 years to accumulate your life savings, and then the Fed prints 50% of the money supply overnight.
I think it creates like a psychosis.
The overlords, if you will, that want us to own nothing and be happy and drive us into like this one world government. Interestingly enough, and it's kind of ironic, Bitcoin is doing that.
Just not in the way that they thought. You know, I think it's like, be careful what you wish for.
It's the bottom-up version of that.
Yeah, and so given the choice, if most people understood that they could just save their money
In money. Yeah.
then they would do that.
It's just all about people not understanding what money is. It's like, well, the problem is you're not saving your money in real money. If you would just save your money in real money, you wouldn't have to go do all these fucking risky things over here. So you said 1657 was the clock.
The pendulum.
Okay. 11 years later, the first central bank.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
What's going on there?
There's a lot to chew on there because
So time.
yeah,
Time to talk about time.
let's go for it.
How have we, what's going on with our relationship to time?
You know, I think in Bitcoin we spend a lot of time talking about these big events that happen in history, 1971, 1913. And when I was researching my book, I came across this really interesting essay called The Tyranny of the Clock. It was written in 1944 by a man named George Woodcock. The Tyranny of the Clock is a discussion about how the most critical invention that has birthed the modern world we all live in now was the mechanical clock, which was made possible by the invention of the pendulum in 1657.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened much before 1971 and after 1657 was the first opportunity for us as a civilization to start to think about time as a commodity, because we now had the ability for clock time, exact time. And prior to the mechanical clock, there were clocks, but they worked on like ballasts, and they could only keep to the hour. And before that, it would have been sundials and hourglasses and things that observed nature and the rhythms of the natural world. And the tyranny of the clock makes the argument that exact time was actually the most important commodity in the Industrial Revolution, because it actually enabled an entirely new conception of how we arranged ourselves. We started to think about using their time as an ingredient in industry, which is a pretty wild thing, because from there we all started wearing watches. And almost unknowingly, in the same way that fiat money changed over time, and central banking itself was as a useful invention for a moment when it was coming of age, the tyranny of the clock was something that then kind of happened to us, where we all became slaves to this clock. Like, he argues that the clock was really the first widely used useful machine. Something that all of a sudden now people, instead of thinking about the duration of something, were thinking about like the length of something. And, we started having a whistle when your shift was over. And so they started training workers around how the work environment would be, an assembly line. And then they instituted that same structure in schools so that we would have, from the very early days of our lives, a programming to think about this time in this way, hours and minutes and seconds. And so I think that the tyranny of the clock is really almost the missing piece when we're talking about fiat money, because in the fiat world, we do understand the price of time, and we were talking about this offline, but we're always trying to make decisions about the value of time. And the problem with the equation when we're using fiat money and clock time is that the absolute that doesn't change is the measurement of minutes and hours and seconds. And the value, based on the total amount of money we have, is continually changing. And so it's that when you put the two together, you end up with a system that just really can't make sense of itself, right? And this is where I think, there are lots of interesting ways to think about Bitcoin and time. But one of them is the idea that as its own clock, Bitcoin provides a different way of conceptualizing time itself. And in that equation, Bitcoin is the constant. Money is now the fixed point in space. And so we can now potentially move to a society where we're no longer slaves to hours and minutes.
This is beautiful. So the equation you're describing, the thing that came to mind, I don't know if this is related or not, Wittgenstein's ruler. He said something like, if you use a ruler to measure a table, but you can't trust the constancy of the ruler, you can never be sure whether you're measuring the table or the ruler. And so we've had fixed standards in time, which is, first of all, it's very interesting, right? The idea of standardizing time, this continuous experience that we all have, but you need to standardize it in order to commoditize it, in order to get everyone, and to get everyone coordinated on common projects, basically. So we turned experience, raw experience itself, almost into this tradable, measurable commodity, which is very fascinating. But the other side of that equation you're saying is fiat money, right? So people are trading their time for money, but the money very much acts like that Wittgenstein's ruler, that it's just, who knows what it means, right? $1 today is worth more than $1 tomorrow, which is basically the general rule for fiat currency, right? It's getting debased all the time. And so people can't, there's a weird illusion going on here where you have constancy on one side of the equation and then whatever the opposite of constancy is, elasticity, I guess, on the other side of the equation. Is that the problem? You're saying Bitcoin replacing that gives you an equation that balances permanently?
I mean, and I guess it wouldn't be a problem if it wasn't the case that fiat money, for the most part, only became less valuable. If there was...
Sure.
Yeah. So I think it's that aspect of it that when you think about it, because we do also have all kinds of terms for thinking about investing that also relate to time, the time value of money. And so that is an understanding that money is more valuable now if we can do something with it.
Yeah.
And we need to grow it.
And that's because of central banking.
Exactly.
Because without that, it would be the inverse.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, wouldn't the problem still exist on a gold standard because we're increasing the supply of gold? So you have elasticity of supply?
Not necessarily. If your products and services are expanding faster than the gold supply, then purchasing power is growing.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I mean, so you can have appreciating time in that kind of gold standard world. But this sort of concept of like absolute time, I think is something that, Bitcoin is preparing for us for actually a different way of thinking about things. We're ingrained in something that's very deep and very old. We've been thinking this way as a species for 400 years. And so it's actually much older than how we are thinking about money now. And, but it's also at the same time true to say that for the thousands of years that existed before 1657, we did have an entirely different conception of time. We would have really experienced life very differently without needing to understand when a certain thing was over. Like, we'd have thought about completion differently. We would have thought about arranging our days differently. And so I don't see a reason why we can't expect that these things will continue to evolve. And it must be possible for a broad understanding of Bitcoin to influence changes beyond how we think about money. Like, this is a time money system that, and it is also, Bitcoin is like an intellectual metronome, which does synchronize human consciousness. We all start consuming each other's ideas. We start consuming each other's content. It's like a vortex, and it's one that is gaining steam as more people join the conversation. And so for that reason, it makes sense to me that we would also expect some of these ideas at a certain point to achieve a critical mass. And so I think it's the Bitcoin world that I envision is much, much different than just we live the way we do now, but we have hard money. I think we have a completely different experience of this, time slavery.
That's a great metaphor, the intellectual metronome. Because isn't that something that both money in its ideal form, which would be Bitcoin, gold is a proxy for it, fiat's not so good at it, but both money conceptually and calendars or clocks are doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're getting us all to synchronize, basically, in terms of our actions and in terms of our, well, maybe not entirely in terms of our thinking, but at least we can, Vervaeke calls this distributed cognition, right? You can get many minds working on one problem, basically, and then you can start dividing those tasks into smaller and smaller parts, and you get a division of labor and all of that. But so it's all of these different ways of abstracting the continuous experience of time into discrete chunks. But then we want those chunks to have some constancy over time, right? It would be very confusing if the second fluctuated day to day or the hour fluctuated day to day. Like if the meter or the mile or anything else fluctuated day to day.
Yeah. And so I'm not at all suggesting that I think we're going to live in a world where people don't know what time it is in the literal sense. But I think it's more like if you understand all the different decisions that you make throughout the course of your day, we are all subconsciously evaluating the time value of money all the time. Mm-hmm. How we spend our free time, some discretionary purchase now or tomorrow, planning for a holiday, planning for retirement. Mm-hmm. How much money do I need to make this year to do this? How much money do I make per hour? What kind of raise do I want? Like these are all these kinds of calculations that then drive behaviors. And so I also think it's fair to say that people who are already living under Bitcoin's clock are experiencing a different personal and subjective experience of time because they know their time is appreciating. Mm-hmm. And so people who are living with low time preference, instead of I have 3 seconds to decide whether or not I want to watch this TikTok, they're thinking like, do I really want to watch this 22-minute show on Netflix, or should I go hike in a mountain for 4 hours and it's going to take me 8 times as long, but it's going to be 10,000 times more enjoyable. Mm-hmm. So we are already doing that. And and I think this is the subjective experience of time, like our understanding of money, although it's a shared thing, like these are maps of reality. Ultimately, it's an inward journey. Like this is something that starts internally, and then you exhibit behavior externally, and that changes your life, right? And so,
it's a fascinating touch point between the quantitative and the qualitative, right? Just by virtue of measuring time, or if you would say money measures time, which is not exactly correct, but at least appraises time, as you said, your time is appreciating. By getting this constant method of dealing with time, a standardization of time in a form of money, you start to qualitatively reevaluate it, right? Mm-hmm. What am I going to buy this thing now, or am I going to wait and let my sats or time appreciate and buy it later? And obviously, we're flirting with the idea of time preference, but what is it then? So this is where I think money is very interesting in this respect, and I guess time as well. We're changing the software package, the mental software package by which we deal with reality and each other and our future selves. So what is it? Is that the struggle here? Is it we're a bunch of people that have adopted new software updates and we're trying to share it with people that are just running the old software?
Yeah.
And so we get a little bit tribal and lost in our vernacular.
I mean,
you have to basically experience it before you can understand it.
Yeah. Because we all understand that time is the most finite thing any of us have. And none of us actually know how much we have, right? Yeah. So I think that, for me at least, what fiat is really an equation to the theft of your time. Mm. If you have spent your own personal time accumulating money, and that money is then devalued, it's not a harmless crime, right? It's like a transfer of energy.
Yeah.
And so knowing that you could help others preserve the time that they have to spend and maybe not having them get it or care, that can be frustrating. And we make so many decisions with this understanding that you have to kind of like do something with your money now. Mm-hmm. and life is already hard enough and goes fast enough without having the added pressure of having to store that time and energy in something that melts.
Yeah.
And
I saw the meme. It was like you work 20 years to accumulate your life savings, and then the Fed prints 50% of the money supply overnight.
yeah,
They just steal whatever half of your nest egg.
yeah.
And it's a crazy rigged game.
I think it creates like a psychosis.
I was just gonna say
Because
that.
none of us
People
feel.
are going crazy. They don't know what it is. They intuitively know they're getting fucked.
Yeah.
And it does create psychosis, but they can't identify exactly what the issue is.
And it's that subconscious time value of money thing that's being manipulated.
Yeah.
That's what's driving them crazy.
Yeah. It's exactly like what you were talking about with the ruler. We are trying to use a sense-making apparatus that doesn't make any sense. It's like,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the other really cool thing, I think there are levels of being connected to your own time thinking about Bitcoin. And I think about like Michael Dunworth sending a Bitcoin into the future that's waiting for him. And imagine like that sense of security that comes with knowing that you willingly transported some of that time and energy into a future moment where it will be waiting for you when you arrive there. Like you had that much confidence about it. And so again, I think that we're just scratching the surface of how we can think about this.
How does this show up in people's psychology, and then I guess more broadly in culture? Like, do we see most of modern culture today being these dollar chasing sort of gambling degenerate sort of trajectory that we're on because of the manipulation of this subconscious time valuation of money? And that if people just, and so the image that's coming to mind is like, instead of constantly chasing more dollars, you don't know why it's happening, but you're chasing more dollars because your purchasing power is constantly being inflated away. But if that wasn't an issue, if you're on a Bitcoin standard, then you would be chasing more of your own time back, right?
Yeah.
How do I spend my time and seconds, whatever I have left, more qualitatively? Is there a switch here? And then how does that show up in culture?
Yeah. I mean, I believe that we co-create the world around us. The societies we erect together are a reflection of the collective subconscious. And that shows up in every single thing we do. And it's not a new idea that everything is like downstream of money. But if you think about the disposable food that we eat, the disposable buildings that we build, just all of these different fiat industries that only exist because of centralized intervention, all of those things could be different, and they were different. So I'm really interested in architecture. And you go around the world and see the things that humanity was building during gold standard times. And it's just true to say that the world we imagined looked a lot different and much more beautiful. When you go to Europe, the buildings that people want to see are, limestone and granite and columns and domes and these incredible archways, and every single detail is beautified. And there's a great meme about this too that you see lots on Twitter where, the drain post in a building from that age was ornate and had like a gargoyle on the spout of the mouth. And today it's like an aluminum disposable. Like, this is where we've gone. And this is why I love this idea of like what happened in 1657, because it wouldn't have been an overnight thing, right? Like, we were mobilizing the human population to create all this ingenious ways of mass producing things and propelling society into a new place. But genuinely, like, simultaneously as that transformation was happening, the world was getting more ugly. And we were, the end result of us commoditizing time was that we started then to think about like, a construction project. This is why buildings are such a great smoking gun, because they're physical and you can go and look at them yourselves. And like, there is no subjectivity to it. Those things are one way and what we build now is another. And so today we produce things that have intrinsically in them a design that has thoughtfully considered, how am I going to make money by building this in the shortest amount of time? This is how we think about it. And we are all products, so the same way we create these environments together, we are products then of the environment.
Of course.
So this is a pervasive civilization level phenomenon that has been evolving for centuries. And where we have arrived today is this peak fiat world where we only can conceptualize time in the sense that we know it will be worth less in the future. This is like a fundamental break in the equation.
iCoin Technology has released a slick new hardware wallet. It looks like a mini iPhone with a high-res 3-inch touchscreen and camera on it. The device has no Wi-Fi, no cellular connection, and no GPS. It is an air-gapped hardware wallet which uses QR codes and a camera to communicate with the Bitcoin network. It has a built-in camera which is required for air-gap operation, and it has an optional Bluetooth compatibility. It's really a brand new user interface and user experience for a Bitcoin hardware wallet. iCoin makes self-custody accessible, easy to use, and non-intimidating. It even comes with an optional custom iCoin thermal printer so you can print out the private key and its associated QR code when you're setting up the wallet. This makes setup quick and simple. Also, it is easy to restore the wallet just by reading the seed phrase QR code with the wallet camera. And as we always talk about on this show, the only way you can truly own your Bitcoin is by having it in self-custody. So you need a device like the iCoin wallet to truly own your Bitcoin. So go to iCointechnology.com/breedlove today for 30% off the purchase of this sleek new hardware wallet. Again, that's iCointechnology.com/breedlove. If you're anything like me, you understand that Bitcoin is something we can use every day to connect, to collaborate, and to build stronger, freer communities. As true Bitcoiners, you all know we are each responsible for onboarding more Bitcoiners. That's why I chose to partner with Cowbolt, an expense splitting app that settles in Bitcoin. It can be as simple as splitting a dinner bill. Your friend covers dinner and you reimburse them, but you send it back to him in Bitcoin. Now your friend has their first sats, and as I always say, where your money goes, the mind follows. By using Cowbolt to get Bitcoin into the hands of your friends and family, you can help us orange pill the world. Cowbolt is built to let you split costs, share expenses, and settle instantly, while always keeping full control of your keys. Cowbolt is simple, social, non-custodial, exactly how Bitcoin was meant to be used. If you're serious about Bitcoin, it's time to act like it. Download Cowbolt today on iOS or Android. To learn more, go to cowbolt.com. Again, that's Cowbolt, COWBOLT.com. Well, very well said. And so, Fiat, you've called time theft technology. And I guess Bitcoin would be the opposite of that, right? Time preservation or something technology. And so the buildings we were building on a sound money standard, right? When we have time preservation technology, they actually they're intergenerational things, right? The cathedrals are often cited as this example. Yeah. That, the bricklayer on a cathedral knew he was never going to sit in that cathedral. Yeah. But he didn't care, right? His time preference was such that, it's fine if his grandchildren can sit there or whatever it may be. But then we get into this industrialization, commodification of time, and then the proverbial pendulum swings too far the other direction, right? Mm-hmm. That we did actually increase our ability to interoperate and have more efficiency in our economies. All of these things are true. We did get a benefit, but that pendulum went too far, right? And now it's just, what's the cheapest? I don't know. There's got to be a middle ground here, right? Like we can't just, maybe we can just build things that are for beauty and artistic purposes, but we also want to get this economic benefit that we've enjoyed since the commodification of time. So is Bitcoin somewhere in the middle, or how do you look at these two extremes?
There's two things that come to mind there. One is it's a different economic calculus when money is appreciating. So there will be an intrinsic expectation of the highest quality. If you're going to do something, then every economic actor has to make the decision of whether they will spend their money on it or just keep it. which we do not have the option to do now. So we actually have to do the opposite. So you might as well do something with your money, build something and flip it. Whereas now then the competition is to deliver the best thing ever. And it could be like the refrigerator that never breaks, or the building that 1,000 years from now, people will be like, holy cow, they built that in 2032. And then, I think the other thing is so this is where the idea of like Bitcoin as a timekeeper makes this possible, because Bitcoin doesn't need to tell us when we need to meet our friends at a restaurant, but it is, Bitcoin is its own clock that cannot be fucked with. So you can't accelerate a block, and some might even take an hour, right? Like a Bitcoin block is like Gandalf. It will arrive exactly when it's meant to. But we can understand this, and we can know roughly when a difficulty adjustment is coming or a halving. And it will give us a long-term way to think as a society about the value of money in the future, which should enable us to reimagine how we go about making long-term decisions and planning for tomorrow. So I think these things hopefully are gradual, but this is how I think of the Bitcoin world of tomorrow, where we've really been rid of this problem of disintegrating money. And as a byproduct of that, like architects should just start dreaming different things, because they won't have the same constraints and realities. And this is why, again, back to George Woodcock, this time thing is made up. And there was a previous era before that invention where things were different, and we built things that were different. And the Duomo in Milan is like arguably the most beautiful building in the world. And it was started before the clock was invented.
Yeah. Have you thought much about what the economics looked like during that time period? Like I was in Prague, and in Prague, I haven't done a lot of traveling, but it was very clear to me the difference in the ancient architecture or the hard money standard architecture versus the fiat stuff. It was just like you're walking through Prague, and it's like there's some glass box, and here's this work of art. Do you know what's going through the minds of the people at the time when they built that? And, I've heard you speak about Tartaria, which is a fascinating rabbit hole in itself. Speaking of time, is our whole history potentially that we're all kind of agreeing to not accurate and factual? Because, you look at these cathedrals, and it's like, are you kidding me? People sat there with hammers and chisels and built this stuff in between trying to not die from dysentery and making it back to and from their shack where they're eating bread. Like, I struggle with it.
There are some really interesting theories about there, because there are some loose ends to how these buildings were built that really doesn't make sense. And the notion that people could build buildings like that and hadn't yet thought of how to build a toilet is one of those things that doesn't hold a ton of water. And the historical narratives of the Dark Ages, there are even historians that question whether or not the Dark Ages actually happened in the way that we've been taught. I think that it's possible that we've been told a lot of things that are not true, but entirely not true. And that's probably even true of really recent stuff.
Yeah, the more I think about things like that, or in like the pyramids and whatever, it just makes me just get to a place where I'm like, I don't know what's true at all. The thing that I believe the most in is that there is, with a high level of probability, never going to be more than 21 million Bitcoin. Like that seems to be like the most certain thing, at least in my own personal world and ideology, that like I can tether myself to. Aside from that, it kind of feels like, I don't even know, is the world flat? Like I guess I'm open to the notion that it's not a globe, which is crazy to say. Like, but it's just the whole thing's fishy.
It is. Ideas to really disseminate, they need to be simple enough that people can grab onto them. I think what you said is really beautiful, because we're not likely to get to a place where the average person really understands the inner workings or the economics of Bitcoin. But I think that, it's like an inception for an idea to take hold. It just has to be boiled down to the most base component of the idea. And with that, it can take root. And
it's like Inception.
Yeah.
The movie Inception, where they're trying to plant the idea in someone's dreamscape, but you had to get the most basic form of the idea for the seed to germinate.
Exactly. 21 million.
Yeah.
fixed supply.
And that's yes, but then it's like, I feel like that's hard for normies to grok. It's like, well, what do you mean 20? Like, how does that relate to all these other things?
I mean, excuse me. I think that we're in a process where they are observing everything else. So the average person who doesn't have any conception of Bitcoin does know that life is getting harder and more disposable all the time. And I like to think that it's almost like breaking a fever, where everybody has their own limit, where they start to question like whether or not fundamentally there's actually something flawed in how things are going. I feel like everybody has that point in them. It's just a lot of people may be capable of sustaining a lot higher temperature in the boiling water than some of us who are here now.
But wouldn't a lot of these problems exist if the central banking apparatus that I think we needed to have to get gold to scale, to build the world that we have today, if it wasn't abused in the level in which it was, and they weren't debasing the currency at such a fast rate, we're still struggling with entropy. There's no single place where you can put your stored up time and energy that's not losing some of it. You got the thermodynamics or entropy, dilution, maintenance costs with real estate. So it's almost this Prometheus moment with Bitcoin where it's like, oh, now I have this vessel that is not leaking my time and energy. We would be struggling with some level of confusion without that fixed monetary unit to store our time and energy in, even if fiat wasn't being abused at the level in which it is.
Yeah, I really am a fan of the term entropy. When talking about Bitcoin, I think we want to talk about it in monetary terms, and because we are thinking about it as money, which it is. But entropy more accurately describes the problem that Bitcoin is solving, in my opinion. Because like in thermodynamics, it refers to sort of energy in a closed system that is not able to perform the function that it was meant to. And in information theory, entropy is related to the amount of verbiage that's required to describe the state of a system, which I can't think of as a more accurate way to describe our current financial system, which has gotten ridiculously convoluted because of the degree of entropy, right? This is a monetary siphoning that's going on as a result of a structural inefficiency of how the money system works. So I think to answer Bitcoin is like a 0 to 1 fix for that thing, and all that's really required is enough people to understand that original thing is a problem. Because government media has done such a great job branding inflation as like a natural phenomenon that is some kind of lubricant that is beneficial for economies. And I think the average person would sort of tell you that, like, no, we need 2-3%, whatever the number is, because without it, everything would stop working, everything will collapse. And that's just what people have been told. And
yeah, even the term itself, inflation, right? It's euphemistic. Obviously, if you have assets, you want them to inflate, right? To grow bigger. That's the general idea in most economics, but I find it to be a very misleading term when it comes to money, because the thing that really matters with money is your purchasing power. And so when your purchasing power is being inflated away, you're actually being debased or siphoned from, as you said. So I think even the selection of that term, inflation, was this weird language game to get people to normalize it and accept it. I had a question. So you said 1657 was the clock, right?
the pendulum.
The pendulum. Okay. 1668. So 11 years later, the first central bank.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
Is that a coincidence or not? That's Sweden's Riksbank.
Yeah.
What's going on there?
It's interesting. I know. There's a lot to chew on there because, and then the period that happened immediately after that, you have kind of the Spanish Armada, American independence happened kind of like, 80, 60 years after that. And then you're into the French Revolution. Like this is really a time of like massive ideological change, ideas that were being birthed at that time. Cause that was also like, Descartes and Voltaire and all these really incredible thinkers. And it all happened after the clock.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wonder about 1668. I have had the same thought.
Yeah. Well, we get, well, I guess you didn't get the immediate economic boom from the pendulum. We had to get into the mechanization of clockwork before we started having the commodification of time.
And it was later on that the second hand happened in the 1850s.
Okay.
And so that was when I think they really kicked it up a
Very
notch.
precise.
Yeah. When and then this idea of like the European civilization had the trains running on time, right? Like this was starting to, I can't remember, you said it really beautifully earlier around kind of mobilizing society in a uniform way.
Yeah, coordinating human action at scale, right? Which I've always thought that was the commonality between, again, timekeeping technologies, clocks, calendars, et cetera, and money. It's like they both it's literally, well, how do you go to lunch? And I'll see you there at 12, right? And a map too, right? Using a map and a calendar and a clock to meet your friend at noon at the lunch place. And then you're also paying for that meal, right? You've coordinated all these complicated actions so that meal shows up on your plate with all these perfect ingredients. You just picked it right off the menu. That's all coordinated through money. So they're different languages in a way that we're using to interconnect our minds and then coordinate our actions to create things that are useful for all of us.
Absolutely. I think they're maps that help us, create a common understanding of the world around us.
Yes, but then if that map is in flux and unreliable, right? The map got me to the restaurant yesterday, and now the restaurant has moved on the map, or it's not there, or it's out of business, or the food quality is down and the prices are up. That's what fiat is, right? I mean, at least metaphorically, is that it's this map that's constantly shifting.
Absolutely.
And that just introduces entropy, as you guys are just talking about, right?
Yeah.
We're overcoming entropy by collaborating. That's how we best overcome entropy across time. It's how we accumulate knowledge and technology and capital to push back entropy and to build civilization. I think it's a good definition for civilization. Is like that bubble we're blowing inside of entropy. So we push the wall back further and further. But then if we start, corrupting the maps, basically, well, then we have leakage. And now that entropy is going to get back in, and then we get, propaganda, psyops, war, all of this entropy that's sort of self-produced rather than just, fiat currency is not a product of nature, for instance.
Yeah.
Right? We're doing it to ourselves.
Yeah. And we're, perpetuating this system by being, willing participants.
Yeah.
And, if you imagine that siphoning at a species level, imagine all of the forward progress that we're losing.
Yeah,
It's not just that things are getting worse. They could actually be getting better, a lot better, a lot faster. And this is like that Jeff Booth idea. Like, why aren't we all living in the Jetsons right now?
Yeah.
This is because
inflation's a good metaphor for that, because we're also concerned about the 2% price increase, but what we're not seeing is the 10% price decrease we would have had.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
Yeah, I remember the first time I heard Booth say, it was on your show, the natural state of the free market is deflation. Just boom, like a psilocybin trip, like immediately I had to pause it and I was like, oh my God, that's so obvious.
Yeah.
So obvious. Why did I not think of that for the first 35 years of my life, right? Like we are conditioned to think that, we need inflation to keep the velocity of money up. The whole thing will collapse. If it's debt-based and built on nothing, then it will collapse. But I think it's, Keynesian pseudoscience, as you would put it.
We love frameworks and structures that enable us to agree on things.
Yes.
And those things then become like paradigms.
Yes.
So this one particular thing I just think has become so ingrained. And the reason why it's like you have to go so deep to start to peel it out because it has affected everything. Yeah.
So some specifics. How has your time preference changed, and how do you think about time and what you're doing with your life as you've started to go down the Bitcoin rabbit hole?
I mean, so what I was describing earlier around my choice of like how I live my life is an easy one, but to back that up one, prior to that happening, what first happened was the end of any paralyzing anxiety about the future or, regret about the past. You very quickly move on from like, oh, I should have way more Bitcoin than I do for X reason, which is kind of true for everyone. I'm happy that I have the Bitcoin that I have, and let's just move on. And I'm now choosing to store my wealth in this sort of like immortal, information block that exists in a non-physical way that can't degrade and can't be taken from me. And so with that, I think, what are the things that prevent you from being in the present moment? There are things that cause you to worry about the future or regret over things that, these are examples of things that could keep you out of the present. So for me, I think it's generally true. Most people get the most enjoyment and fulfillment, whatever they're doing, when they're just living in the present moment fully, enjoying, time with their loved ones or, whatever your hobbies are. And the biggest thing I think is genuinely for me, having this critical problem solved has just enabled me to consume my time differently. We all have to, we're forced to consume our time at the same rate. But how you feel when you're doing it can be very different. And this is almost like one of those ideas of like, it's not that different maybe than I'm living like I have a sundial instead of a digital watch. And it feels great. Like this is where we want to be.
That's a good frame. You were forced to consume our time at the same rate, right? The same quantity, but not in the same way, the same quality. And so we get this unlock of, well, once this problem is solved, right? That how do I store the fruits of my labor across time? You're liberating yourself to come more into the present and decide, how do I structure the conditions of my life so that I can be here as much as possible, right? I don't need to be worried about the future. I don't need to be stuck in the past. You can really liberate yourself, your mind, and find the ways that you come into the flow state, for instance, or find more ways to spend time with your loved ones. All of these things where you really soak up the quality of life in the present moment. Those are all consequences of solving that lower order problem.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas it seems like most of the world is still really fully absorbed in the lower order problem. And again, there's this, it's because of the I love how you said that earlier, the subconscious time valuation of money process.
Yeah.
And I think it really does boil down to that for most of these things.
Yeah.
Because like there's people that say like, oh, I don't care about money. I'm like, okay, do you have a full-time job? Yes. Okay. Well, then you are in a performative contradiction. If you say you don't care about money, but you work full-time, it's like, well, you're sacrificing most of your life for money. So obviously it matters, but it's more about the money that is actually broken and not serving them that I guess gives them this implicit problem that they themselves can't even identify.
Yeah. This is what I think of as the time value of Bitcoin. And it's this transformation of how you're conceptualizing, the relationship between value and time. And I do believe that most people don't really genuinely want to be rich. I think what most people are craving is autonomy over that purely finite thing.
Big time.
Freedom.
Yeah. I mean, and for me, I think what happens, and you said it, Robert, when you can be in that flow state, you get to start really getting in touch with the things that you might, like true creativity. For me, I exited my previous life in traditional finance and co-founded a Bitcoin company. And, I now have the opportunity because of that thing that happened where I understood what I could do with the money that I'd amassed in my journeys, that I could take a chance and try to do something and try to help other people have the same realization.
Did you used to struggle with both anxiety about the future and regrets of the past? Because me personally, since I've been, orange pilled, I've become much more present, and I've for many years of my life not had an issue with concerns about the past. But I still struggle with this to this day. I mean, last night, for example, I get home and my kid's running around. She wants to shred, and like I'm not fully present. I'm like thinking about all the things that I need to do over there. I want to just kind of lay down and kind of process all this stuff. And it's taking me out of the present. I'm getting much better with that. How do you deal with that? Are you, kind of a recovering worrier, or did you used to struggle with being present?
Yeah. I never really spent a lot of time worrying about either of those things, but I have noticed the clarity of actually having an almost total removal of those things. So that's very true for me. And because now it occupies like none of my mind space. And I think that this is true for just about everybody, just to varying degrees. So how much of your mind space does this take you away from these things? And I think civilizations being the collection of individuals, this disposable, distracted world that we've built is an outer reflection of the inner turmoil that this problem causes, right?
Yeah.
So where we all have less time for each other, less focus on our relationships, less time to just quiet and actually hear the voice in your own head, inner guidance. So my ability to spend more time with that has been a really amazing thing. And I have a cool, I think it's also changed my relationship with my personal notion of what the pursuit of wealth is. And I do wonder about how we will imagine that term when there is a fixed amount of money. And
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. These people often bring this up in recent conversations, the idea of this hyper abundant future we're going into with obviously perfectly sound money, Bitcoin, but then you have all these productivity booms coming from AI and et cetera, et cetera. Those two things seem like they're going to unlock a lot of economic prosperity for people, and in a form that can't be confiscated easily or at all. So that the whole idea, we put so much emphasis today on our standing in the socioeconomic hierarchy, specifically the economic hierarchy. Maybe that won't be such a feature in the future, right? If everyone's needs are kind of mostly met, and then maybe even people are living lives of semi-luxury with very low effort, 4 to 10 hours a week of work, something like that, then all of a sudden it wouldn't matter so much if someone's a billionaire or a trillionaire. It's like, well, how much better is your life really? I've already got all of these things, and I'm working 4 hours a week and have a ton of freedom, ton of autonomy. I'm, spending a lot of time with loved ones and, all the things that really matter for life satisfaction. Whereas today we seem very hypnotized, like, oh, if I could just get the yacht or just get the plane, like this would be the thing that would unlock fulfillment. And of course, that's simply not the case.
Yeah. More money doesn't make people happier.
Yeah.
And I also think that Bitcoin will really transform the way we conceptualize ownership. And I used to hate you will own nothing and be happy. But I actually now think it might have been, of kind of a visionary, but just not in the way that they meant it. Because another byproduct of this money problem we've been talking about for the last however long is that, when money doesn't perform its functions, we turn other things into money.
Yeah.
And so we have turned physical things into forms of money in a form of hoarding. And what we're trying to do is really protect our time. We're trying to hoard that energy. And a lot of these decisions and the stuff that we have meaning. This is meaning that has been granted from this money map. And it only makes sense in that map. And so if all of that were to become unbundled or dissolved, how we imagine ownership or even what meaning ownership has could be very different. And so I think if you throw that into what you're talking about with productivity, abundance, and AI, a real shift in the calculus we make as individual actors and in terms of what we're pursuing and what we hope to have could be just entirely different.
Yeah. So a world perhaps where we own mostly Bitcoin and then much smaller percentages of everything else, because those things wouldn't be appreciating as much over time.
I sold my house to own Bitcoin for that reason. And so I'm living in that future now.
Yeah.
All three of us are rentals.
Yeah. Same.
Yeah. My attitude towards physical stuff growing up, I had access to essentially whatever I wanted, but it wasn't endless. So I had to really take care of my things. Over the last 5 years, I actually I almost have distaste towards physical stuff. I'm like, it's just physical shit. It's just going to degrade my truck, for example, it's making rattles. I got an issue with a gasket. That would have torn me up 5 years ago. And now I'm like, whatever, it's fucking get rid of it in a couple of years. It's just physical crap.
Yeah. I love it when my wife brings up the designer handbags. She's like, oh, these are great because they hold money over time. I'm like, not when they're denominated in Bitcoin, they don't. Everything's collapsing. Forget multivitamins and other supplements. Animal organs are the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet. You can get 100 times more nutrients from organs than you can from muscle meats. But the problem with eating organs is that they are difficult to find in stores, they are difficult to prepare, and even when they are prepared well, they often don't taste great. Thankfully, Heart and Soil Supplements has made consuming organ meats so much easier by providing powderized organs in capsule form. Organ meats include everything your body needs to thrive: vitamins, minerals, peptides, proteins, and growth factors. This is why organ meats were the most prized foods for our ancestors. Fortunately for us, Heart and Soil makes these treasured foods easily accessible. So go to heartandsoil.co today and use discount code BREEDLOVE to get started on your journey to optimal health and vitality. Again, that's heartandsoil.co, discount code BREEDLOVE. What if I told you that you could lower your tax bill and stack Bitcoin at the same time? Well, by mining Bitcoin with Blockware, you can. New guidelines from the Big Beautiful Bill allow American Bitcoin miners to write off 100% of their mining hardware investment in a single year. That's right, a 100% write-off. So if you had $100,000 of income or capital gains, you could write off that entire amount by investing it in Bitcoin mining hardware. Blockware's mining as a service allows you to start mining Bitcoin right now with minimal effort. Blockware handles everything from securing the miners to sourcing low-cost energy to configuring the mining pool. They do it all. You can stack Bitcoin at a discount every day and save big when tax season comes. So you can get started today by going to mining.blockwaresolutions.com/breedlove. Again, that's mining.blockwaresolutions.com/breedlove. I wanted to ask you this, like maybe before we get too far off the time perception change that the switch to perfectly sound money would induce in us. How does that ripple out? I mean, you mentioned architecture earlier, so like I'm assuming we'd go away from this industrialized sort of dead architecture that we have today. It's like it's very spiritless. We'd go back to something that was more spirited, perhaps. But what other ways do you think this would ripple out into our worldviews, our work, our relationships, etc.?
I mean, I think in the appreciating time world, it's actually the case that everything works backwards. So instead of having 8 minutes with your physician, you have an hour.
I see. Yeah.
Instead of paying the least possible you can for the piece of food that would last for a year and inside its packaging, you know, you're only going to eat the things that have been like meticulously grown and you know are good for you. I think, you know, if you have that money problem solved, I mean, I think we all want to live as long as we can, but truly the future becomes a lot more inspiring when you feel like you have a reason to believe that your life tomorrow should genuinely be better than it is today. So I think that affects how we think about anything we would consume or do. And that creates a cascading change that actually this completely rewrites. It's just so fundamental. Like we don't even consider these things in our daily, you know, in our daily anything. Yeah.
Yeah, it's extremely fun to think about. I mean, most of the people on Earth today are trying to figure out how to make sure they don't have a shittier tomorrow. Like that's the issue. Like I look around, everyone's just like, what am I going to do so that tomorrow is not harder than today? Today is already hard, but my tomorrow is likely to be harder. Like that's,
I mean, and when you see
it's such a problem, like, oh, fuck.
There are places all over the world that don't have the same understanding of ownership or money, and they are way happier with living with much less, you know, technological innovations and conveniences. And then you just see them, you know, on a National Geographic, whatever, and they're just happy. Like there's a lot of these other things, they're all externalities, right? These are things that have been imposed on us as a result of a system we were involuntarily adopted into at birth. And I think this is the real opportunity that we have. And this is why I love talking about this stuff with Bitcoin. It's like, we just need to get as many people opening their minds to new possibilities as fast as we can, as many people as we can, as fast as we can. I think the rest does the work on its own because everybody already wants this. Everybody wants a better tomorrow. Everybody wants that financial holy grail. The reason we do all this stuff, like have an Airbnb and a side job and only, all of these different like side hustle culture is the individual people trying to innovate their way out of a problem that they haven't grokked.
Right.
And so all of that is involuntary stuff. People would rather be spending the time with their families.
Yeah, there's a big emphasis on the hustle in modern fiat culture, but it's not, people don't want the hustle.
Yeah.
People want to hustle to be free of the hustle.
Yeah.
And so that's a weird thing, right? It's like, oh, we're glorifying this thing that we all actually want to be free of. It's like, what? It's a weird thing, right?
It's like, I don't know. It's like, I don't know, getting praise or flexing when you're in the gym. Like, hey, check it out. I'm in the gym. I'm doing the work. Hey, I'm grinding. I'm hustling so that I could have a better tomorrow. I guess it's inspiring.
Yeah, the only change I would say there is like, I'll work out. Like, I don't have to work out, right? I would still go forever, but my Airbnb side hustle, like as soon as you're a billionaire, that shit's gone, right?
Totally.
But as soon as you're a billionaire, you're probably still working out. So there's like even, I mean, that metaphor matches somewhat, but I think it's worse than that. People actually don't want to do these things. They're doing these things to be free of these things.
That's a good point.
And like expecting sensible leadership. Like in that world, we would just expect low time preference governance.
Yeah.
If people have to be in charge, they should at least have the baseline expectation that the choices that they're making are not instant gratification things that are related to their own political careers and election cycles. Like, this is, I think, why, we've gone also away from, you look at what China's doing really well right now. They're building 1,000-year infrastructure projects, and they're doing it on like longer time frames. They're not so worried about, they have taken a longer time preference vision for what they want that country to become. And as a result of that decision, they are really moving mountains over decades. And during that same period, observably, things are getting worse here. It's definitely not as good here as it was 15 years ago. Not here, wherever we are specifically.
Western world.
The Western world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like politicians they treat the government like a rental car. They just get in there and drive the shit out of it, leave a cigarette butt on the floorboard. Hey, I'm going to just beat the shit out of this car and get what I need for me and my people, and then I'm going to pass this thing on with smoking tire brakes and whatever to the next idiot.
A book that's very popular in Bitcoin circles is Democracy, the God That Failed by Hoppe. And he makes the point, they drive the government like it's a rental car because that is their incentive. You're in there for 4 to 8 years, right? Your job is to sweep all the problems under the rug for your predecessor. So the guy that comes after you, sorry, not predecessor, and to take as much as you can for yourself. So you have there's a built-in incentive for high time preference activity in democracy. And now that author goes so far to say maybe we lost some of that long-term time preference incentive when we gave up monarchy. Right, and
you and Jimmy's song dug into this.
Yes,
right?
And it kind of makes sense, right? Like if you own the tax base and you know you're going to pass it on to your son, who's going to pass it on to his son, it's like, well, then you care about the baker and you want to have a long relationship with the baker. You don't want to tax him too much. You want to make sure that he's happy. You're taxing just enough to keep the relationship going. You want your son and his son to have the same relationship, and so on and so forth. So you have a long-term interest in the capital base, which is the tax base in this case. And so I don't know, like I'm not saying we should, that sounds pretty radical, right? Let's give up all democracy and go back to monarchy. We screwed up. But I don't think democracy makes a lot of sense, at least with these very short term limits.
Is that what's happening in China?
I don't know what's happening in China.
Why is there? I'm curious as to why there's a time preference difference in the
I mean,
leadership there.
there's a few reasons. One, China's like the oldest continuous running civilization, and so like they, for thousands of years, in China they viewed themselves as the dominant country in the world. Westerners may not have understood it in the same way, but if you're in China, that's absolutely how they feel. And the general person on the street sort of considers like, the 20th century was a bit of a blip, like, oopsie. And China's just sort of like making its way back to the position it's always been in. And so they do think differently because they're older. They're an older civilization than the Western world. And then functionally, because they operate in a single party system, they can just do whatever they want. And that's really like affects everything. I lived in China 20 years ago for a year, and the city that I was living in was a city of like 12 or 13 million people. And they decided that they wanted to build a comprehensive multi-line subway system and do it in under 5 years. And they would do it by like, working 24 hours a day, ripping up the main roads, like whatever had to happen. And like, they did it. And like, they did it in the same time, like the city where I'm from in Canada is Edmonton, they managed to build like 10 blocks of an above ground train during that time for probably the same budget. Like, so they have an ability to just make stuff happen because there is no like, you can't have a noise complaint that there's a tunneling happening down the street. Yeah.
The central planning gives you a lot of latitude to move fast and hard at things. It does come with the problems like overcapacity. They have the largest hydroelectric dam.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's still the largest. It was the largest hydroelectric dam in the world, Three Gorges.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's still true, but it was way overproducing electricity. They didn't have enough places to sell it to, which would be a prime candidate for Bitcoin mining.
They keep banning it.
Yeah, well, they keep banning it. So, but also they're not purely a product of central planning anymore, right? They've introduced some market incentives at certain layers in the governance structure. And, I don't know the right mix, but it seems like they would gain certain advantages from that versus trying to be a purely centrally planned country.
Yeah, I think these are all problems when you start combining the different ingredients. They're all fine on their own.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like money and time.
Yeah. Do you know much about their orientation towards Bitcoin over there?
Our senior marketing director at Block Rewards, Roger Huang, wrote a great book called Would Mao Hold Bitcoin? Came out last summer. And I was actually how Roger and I got connected. I really enjoyed that book. And was surprised to hear sort of it's a very detailed look at what's happening in the Bitcoin world in China right now. Chinese culture has a long affiliation with gold. People love to buy gold, hold gold, store gold. Bitcoin is, I think, Bitcoin has this crazy component of it that it's borderless. And China is really like a nation of like capital controls.
Yeah.
Right. And so like the real estate market in Canada has partly done what it's done. I mean, it's a lot of it's money printing, but a lot of it is also that has been a really effective way to get money out of China.
Yes.
And Would Mao Hold Bitcoin is a very good book if you're interested in that.
What was the answer? Would Mao hold Bitcoin?
I don't know if he actually answers it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Interesting.
So as Bitcoiners, a lot of this stuff becomes painfully obvious. Do you think that there's going to be some like mass awakening, like the 100 monkey theory? Like there's just going to be an inflection point in the next couple of years where like the whole world wakes up to this? Because at times I think that's going to happen, and other times I get a little down and out, like, oh my God, people are never going to figure it out.
I'm a hyper Bitcoinization bull. I get that people can be skeptical about the time frames that, and people always ask, like, is this something you envision happening in our lifetime? Personally, I love Michael Saylor. I don't envision a world where we're ever talking about a $20 million Bitcoin. And I think that's just such an edge case where if we were talking about Bitcoin as being worth 20 million of anything, that thing would be worthless. So if that's 2045, then I think that's how much time we're working with. For me, it's kind of like the idea that at this point, very few people actually know how cars work, and we all drive them. Not everybody, for this thing to happen, is going to have to understand how Bitcoin works. I do think that ideas can spread. You mentioned the 100 Monkeys theory. Is this study that was conducted on the island of Kashima in Japan in the 50s, where they were teaching monkeys to wash sweet potatoes because they taste better when they're clean, and just trying to determine whether or not the monkeys could teach each other to wash the potatoes. And the story goes, after a certain number of monkeys learned the skill, monkeys on other parts of the island that had nothing to do with the test started exhibiting the behavior. They had no way to explain it. But I think there's a lot about consciousness that we don't understand. I certainly think that it's possible that Bitcoin does achieve a critical mass where the ordinary person is not, I mean, most people, general financial literacy, we're never going to expect it to get to a place where this is going to be normal, but where it's the idea of it makes sense for people enough that they're comfortable and would prefer to just use the money that doesn't melt. Like, I think that's a pretty reasonable idea that we can diffuse in sooner than people think.
Seems like that 100th monkey effect would be even more pronounced in a world where we can connect over long distances with language and telecommunications. Once you see some two-legged monkeys adopting a strategy that works for you, right? A Bitcoin-based strategy that would just spread very quickly.
Yeah.
I was actually shocked it took so long. We're now seeing this wave of Bitcoin treasury companies basically emulating the MicroStrategy, which is now Strategy Playbook. I'm surprised it took 5 years.
Yeah.
I thought after the one bull run, we would see this basically.
Me too.
But it's taken longer. But now it's gradually, then suddenly, now it's happening all at once.
Yeah, the corporate adoption has taken a lot longer than I expected, but the nation state pivot has been faster than I expected.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
I think it's going to happen too, nation states. And I think if Harvard still exists in 20 years, there will be like case studies. A lot of executives are going to have to answer for why they didn't use that time in the early 2020s to at least evaluate the merit of Saylor's ideas. And when people understand what he's done, there will be, this is another thing that like, that's not going to take another 20 years because Strategy will be the most valuable company in the world at some point. And when that happens, a lot of very smart people are going to have to understand why.
Is it a humility thing? Is that why we've seen so much resistance to this? Why haven't more Fortune 1000 CEOs adopted this strategy?
I would love to know the answer to that question because, everyone's looking for an edge, and
this is the easiest edge ever.
And
just
a lot
switch
of
your
these,
savings account.
a lot of these companies are also like really experiencing, the non-Mag 7 companies in the Fortune 1000 are in a tough time, right? Like it doesn't matter what industry, people's consumer habits have really changed. It would be a tough time to be a C-suiter. So, and then you have this one outlier stock that has almost lapped everybody else since he decided doing this one thing that most people wanted to call stupid. It's crazy to me that, and like, so I went to the strategy conference in Orlando in May, and Saylor was telling the story about how the Microsoft executive team gave him 3 minutes.
Did you watch that 3-minute presentation?
He played it for the room.
It was so good. He packed so many Saylor-esque little nuggets into this 3-minute, and he kept like a nice, smooth
3 minutes.
3 minutes.
3 minutes.
I mean, imagine
point of
anything like, it's like a speed date. Like, sell me this pen.
That seems like purposefully disrespectful. It's like 3 minutes at a shareholder meeting. What else were they doing?
I think about all their executives, to your point. And what are those people going to say when they get walked out at some point?
Well, I think the big corporations have board members that are unaware of the existential crisis that they have. And so a lot of these treasury companies are essentially like zombie or dead companies that are, throwing in a Hail Mary. So with all the big dogs, it's going to be interesting to see who goes first. I think that Zuckerberg might be might be the one who could get away with making that move, but they're unaware of the existential crisis that they have. They're all big tech monopolies, or generally speaking. So they have these monopolies on the market. So they don't have the same issue that MicroStrategy had, where he knew he was done.
Yeah. I mean, but this is the same thing I think that happens to individual people often who make the same choice. And it's probably true to say that those executives that aren't have this same fundamental misunderstanding of the notion that 2% inflation is a natural occurring phenomenon. Yeah.
Our economic conditioning is really starting to work against us, that people take this for granted. And then you miss it's the lowest effort asymmetric advantage there's ever been for a Fortune 1000 company. What did Saylor do? He switches his savings account and you more than 100x your market cap in 5 years.
Well, that's a combination of switching the savings account and leveraging this Keynesian economic system.
Well, then added to it, basically.
Yeah,
but the switch was really all you had to do at the beginning. You don't have to go the full tilt and leverage everything.
Triple maxi.
Yeah, like in these conditions, you literally could just switch your cash holdings into Bitcoin.
Yeah, just use the money that isn't melting.
Yeah, and you can choose that's a spectrum, right? There's the very basic strategy, and you can go with the advanced strategy. But right now, all you'd have to do is the basic. So, for instance, had Microsoft done this, or let's pick Apple. Apple had, I don't know, 5 years ago, $100 billion of cash or something on the balance sheet. If they put all that in Bitcoin 5 years ago, that's over $1 trillion now. It's just cash. And you did nothing. You just switched no debt, nothing. You just switched your savings account.
Yeah.
So the fact that hasn't caught on, more people, it's like, you're telling me I've got to do basically nothing, just switch an account, and then I get a 100x upside on my cash position.
It's this idea of entropy, and
I'm sorry, 10 plus X upside.
The misconception that it's, Bitcoin is money, and people are thinking about it as like, speculative asset. And this is why I think they wouldn't make that connection.
Yeah.
You're actually just trading one form of money for another.
That's right. Or you're trading a pseudo money for real money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, and I wonder what, and I'm invested in this because I'm in this business, but it's how long is it going to take for a company to then realize we should be doing this in everything that we do? Why are our employees still working for this paper money? Why are we not taking what we know and using that as a tool to outcompete by offering staff something that is better for them? And this is, I think, and I absolutely think this is where we are headed, where it's not going to take them. Somebody is going to continue. This will continue to get innovated, and businesses will have to survive by. The fiat game gets only harder, and so the relentless search for edge, and AI is going to accelerate this problem. Where how can you be relevant and grow market share and all of these things that these big pubcos need to do? Bitcoin can do a lot more than just preserve the capital on your balance sheet and attract more shareholders.
Yeah.
It could rewire your corporate culture. It could change the way your employees think about making low time preference decisions for the company.
Interesting.
There are cultural things that adopting a Bitcoin mindset could do, that could actually birth the future of successful companies. And I think that the companies that start to really think this way and disregard really fiat traps will be the ones that emerge in that world of tomorrow and thrive.
Why is that? Is that because as you become more, bolstered up, I guess, by your balance sheet, then you don't have to be scouring for ideas and ways to keep that P&L going? Is it your fiscal responsibility? I don't need to just continue to create all these widgets to just keep the whole thing alive. I can actually calm down here. I got this Bitcoin on the balance sheet. We could figure out what's a real problem to solve and go after that on our own time frame. And
it's like this problem we were talking about with politicians, but just imagine that was your business. Yeah. And if you could have an executive team that all understood the power of this tool and, were themselves being compensated in that tool, like I heard at the conference that there's like 20 Bitcoiners that work at Strategy. They've got like 1,500 employees, and that there's employees that don't participate in the share purchase program because they are concerned about what the perceived risk of the Bitcoin strategy. So even there, it's like, imagine that one thing flipped where now most of the people at the company understand why the company is doing that. Like, they're going to be attracting those people. Those people will never leave. They'll be buying the company's shares like crazy because they'll actually understand what they have. You know, so if you just condense that down to your leadership team, imagine if you had a small group of people who were really smart. You could get them in a room and say, we need a vision for what this company is going to do for the next 10 years. We've protected our capital already. We know we've done that part. Like, now how do we take this thing and do something that hasn't been done yet? Like, it is actually a secret sauce. Like, I still think it's cool to see what's going on with corporate treasury because it's in its infancy, and it's like, oh, it's like a kid who's now learned to walk, and it's like, look, I'm walking. Like, this is great. But like, we're talking about a financial tool with a limitless potential number of applications, and we're barely scratching the surface because most people still don't understand its money.
I don't think I've ever heard anyone phrase it like that. It's the idea of educating and or compensating your employees in Bitcoin, or putting Bitcoin on the balance sheet, employing them, compensating them with stock, that you're actually not just using Bitcoin to optimize the balance sheet, preserve purchasing power, grow purchasing power over time, but you're also using it to lower the time preference of your stakeholders, right? Your employees, your executives, maybe even your shareholders. Like, that's an interesting idea. I wonder how that's difficult to quantify, I think. Mm-hmm. But, you know, if you consider that, like, if you're playing a game of chess, the player that can out anticipate the other player or see more moves into the future, like the one that has the lower cognitive time preference, if you will, is the one that's going to win. Mm-hmm. So I wonder if there actually would be a competitive advantage for businesses that are just putting this financial pressure on their own mind to think longer term, and how that would show up in the actual competitive strategy of the business.
Yeah, I mean, so like
or the country, or anything, or any organization that's doing it.
Absolutely. I think it's very normal for people who understand Bitcoin to then immediately start relating it to whatever their personal expertise is. Like I was mentioning before, I came from the world of sort of like total rewards, pensions, group retirement savings plans. So for me, immediately the first thing I started noodling on when I really got Bitcoin was like, oh man, like there's so many different ways to think about how this could exist in the employment relationship. What we were talking about earlier absolutely relates to this, because what are the things that really damage a business's productivity are, you know, turnover, absenteeism, people, you know, they have financial problems, so they can't do their job properly. And so businesses already today spend a ton of money trying to solve this problem in the same way. You know, all these fiat behaviors get innovated. These are just people trying to solve problems. And the solution just totally exists already. It's just helping people understand whatever they have that they're able to save, they should just put it in Bitcoin, and then they can really focus on their work. And that, you know, creative flow space we were talking about earlier, now that time that's spent at work is channeled into, you know, helping the business thrive. So we have customers that have been doing this with us for years now. And, you know, some where they, you know, encourage their employees to start participating and saving in Bitcoin with us. They didn't even know why they were doing it at the time. You know, Bitcoin has done a 7x over the last 2 years, and their 10,000 is 70,000 now. There's no other vehicle that could have changed their life like that. And this business, like these companies in that time, nobody's quitting ever. You know, like you're never going to lose an employee like that. So this is why I don't understand why like people, executives or business owners who understand Bitcoin aren't trying to think about doing this. Employees, you know, Bitcoiner employees, I think of it as like, it's a nice to have. It would be cool to earn Bitcoin, but I can just buy it on my own. But like, let's just think a little bit bigger. Like we can power the entire world on this thing. And, you know, and it doesn't have to be the entire world. It can just be your business. And, you know, it could fundamentally change the outcome of everything you're trying to do.
Well, and doesn't it change the way a business operates, or the mentality amongst the people working for a corporation or themselves, where like, hey, I have this thing on the balance sheet, or I'm saving in this thing that's appreciating at a fast enough rate. Now I don't have to go into the world and look for problems to solve so that I can survive.
Yeah.
I can now figure out what problem do I want to solve.
Yeah.
And that's a complete like inversion in the mentality there.
Yeah.
It's like a sailor said, the road to serfdom is working exponentially harder for a currency growing exponentially weaker.
Yeah.
And it's not just the currency though, it's everything that people are saving in due to entropy and increase in supply.
Yeah. Yeah. Imagine like General Electric said, okay, everyone, we've moved all our capital into Bitcoin. We're now only going to make products that last 100 years. And if you're not on board with that, you're fired. You know, and like we're going to bring in people who can think that way. And we're going to outcompete everyone by building products that are permanently better than anything else that's available. They're going to be more expensive. Well, we're going to get less churn, but we're pretty sure that people are going to want that stuff because it'll be the only fridge you ever need to buy.
Such a great HR filter too. Because then all the no coiners just quit. Like, yeah, just take the severance package and walk.
Yeah.
And then we're going to hire all these long-term thinking, highly technically proficient, diehard Bitcoiners.
Yeah.
It might be a difficult work culture to remain coherent because Bitcoiners tend to be so disagreeable.
Oh, our company's
But
insane.
if you could accomplish that, you'd have a badass organization.
Totally. Yeah.
I mean, times would an employee be like, you know what? You could get fucked. I'm not doing that. I'm sitting on some Bitcoin. You can figure it out yourself.
But there's a
Watch your mouth.
prerequisite of critical thinking. Like you have to be willing to do some, you need to have a limber brain to get that far. And so that's also a pretty nice, like, filtering mechanism for people you might want to have in the organization. But I think on the other side, like I have observed this throughout my career. And so I absolutely know this is true. That kind of like ambient anxiety people have about finance, because most people really don't understand how this stuff works, does translate into when they show up to the job. And it has a lot to do with when they decide to leave. And, the products that we've innovated that don't include Bitcoin to help solve these problems have really like made it worse, because we have effectively fused saving and gambling into products that, try to accomplish this really difficult task of growing people's money at the rate it's melting.
Yeah.
Which is hard to do.
Which necessitates moving further out on the risk spectrum.
Yes.
And so it's risk reward. You almost can't do it. In a risk adjusted way, you can't do it.
Yes.
You might get lucky. You might not.
Yeah. Yeah. And so given the choice, if most people understood that they could just save their money
in money,
yeah, then they would do that.
Yes.
They would totally do that thing. And
I'm sorry, but it's not lost on me here that we keep coming back to this. It's just all about people not understanding what money is.
Exactly.
It's like, well, the problem is you're not saving your money in real money. If you would just save your money in real money, you wouldn't have to go do all these fucking risky things over here.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. And so I think that it's natural that as people receive that understanding as a result of being exposed to it by somebody, there's a natural like gratitude. Like I'm immensely grateful to Jeff Booth forever for writing that book and let it happen to find me. And I've told him that. And, but this plays out to infinity, right? Until we've helped everybody figure out this thing. And so today we exist in this really cool space where, two of the first 200 companies that do this are going to, probably have a great run as long as they can manage it and they've built the right control mechanisms and stuff. And yeah, it's an exciting time to be alive.
No doubt about that. Have you ever wanted to start a business in the Bitcoin space? If so, then the Wolf Startup Accelerator could be for you. Wolf is the first startup accelerator dedicated exclusively to businesses developing in the Bitcoin Lightning Network. 4 times each year, Wolf brings teams from around the world to New York City to work with like-minded entrepreneurs, pushing the boundaries of what's possible with Bitcoin and Lightning. The program is designed to help early-stage companies achieve product-market fit, develop their brand, secure early-stage funding, and grow businesses that fuel the global adoption of Bitcoin. Go to wolfnyc.com to learn more or apply today. Again, that's Wolf, WOLFNYC.com. Bitcoin custody is evolving. Both self-custody and single third-party custody come with significant risk and trade-offs. Onramp is pioneering a new standard, multi-institution custody, which eliminates single points of failure, adding fault tolerance and redundancy to your setup. Onramp secures your Bitcoin in a segregated cold storage multi-sig vault guarded by 3 independent institutional-grade custodians, none of which that have unilateral control over your assets. More than just security, Onramp simplifies inheritance and estate planning, ensuring your Bitcoin wealth moves seamlessly to your loved ones without the risk and complexities of self-custody. Easily designate beneficiaries right in the Onramp dashboard, eliminating the need for unreliable treasure maps or other complex key-sharing schemes. You can also avoid the probate process and ensure your heirs receive their Bitcoin securely with legal title transfers designed to keep your wealth intact for generations. As Bitcoin continues to appreciate, Onramp helps you seamlessly access financial services, from inheritance and insurance to trading, loans, IRAs, and more, all without compromising on security. And importantly, the onboarding process is fast and frictionless. I set up my own Onramp account, and it was far easier than dealing with hardware wallets or traditional self-custody setups. The team walked me through everything step by step, making sure I had a secure, reliant setup for my Bitcoin wealth. Secure your generational wealth with confidence. Schedule a consultation with the Onramp team today at onrampbitcoin.com/breedlove. Again, that's onrampbitcoin.com/breedlove.
You think in 21 years from now, we're not going to be at $21 million a coin. We'll be at some infinite dollar denominated value because we'll have hyperinflated and we'll be on a Bitcoin standard?
I don't know about hyperinflated. I just think that we will start pricing things gradually side by side, and the one price will be going up and the other price will be going down. Like, so, you know, in British Columbia, it was 600 Bitcoin for a house 10 years ago, and now it's 6.
Yeah.
And like, that idea is not that complicated. When I tell people, it does, it like stuns them, but it's like, so it's just like, and then this is where I'm not actually like a medium of exchange bull. I don't think it matters.
I agree with that.
Yeah. And so they'll figure out, if they want the dollar to survive, they're going to try to figure out some way to peg it, whatever.
To Bitcoin.
To Bitcoin.
I feel like Bitcoin's going to extend the life of the dollar, and it's going to reduce inflation in all sectors of the marketplace except for Bitcoin. Maybe equities, but I think housing's not going to appreciate as fast. Equities aren't going to appreciate as fast. You're going to see all this debasement find its way into Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And then additionally, if you think about the idea of blocks and you look at the whole global monetary system, you have this debt-based currency where the monetary units are being lent into existence as debt against assets. So you could just basically say, here's all the debt in the world, and here's this basket of assets that collateralizes the debt. Every one of these assets is struggling from entropy and all sorts of different versions. We're increasing the supply of all of them. Treasuries, equities, gold, real estate, all of that. We're increasing the supply of them. So we're actually diluting their value. Yeah. But we have to continue to debase. The more we innovate, the faster we're diluting the value of the basket of assets that collateralize the debt.
Yeah.
So then they have to print more money to prop up that asset value. It has to be a higher nominal value than whatever the debt is. Yeah. But in real terms, we're pushing the value of this stuff down, requiring more debasement. But if Bitcoin enters that basket of assets that collateralize the debt, unless globally that balance sheet was rebalanced and they were selling down the Bitcoin and buying treasuries or whatever, it'll become a larger percentage of what's collateralizing the debt.
Yeah.
As that happens, because even though we're increasing the supply of Bitcoin, we're increasing the supply of Bitcoin at a slower rate than we're increasing the supply of everything else. In theory, the debasement required to keep the system solvent decreases. It's like we were at a 1-to-1 peg, gold, dollar, or certificate, gold-backed certificate, completely detached in 1971. I actually see it reattaching on a hard money standard, but to Bitcoin. Yeah. And as we go through that process, the debasement required to keep the system solvent decreases. And the debasement that is required to keep the system solvent hurts less people because it is not further monetizing things like housing that people need to exist. So if Bitcoin was $10 million tomorrow, that's not a problem for anybody. Yeah. But if housing went up 100% overnight, that's a big problem.
The only thing I think is like the difference is that like the dollar kind of becomes like a third nipple because you can actually spend Bitcoin, and the Lightning Network can absolutely handle all of the transactional flow of the entire world. So like, what do you actually need dollars for? I kind of think it's like, you know, my take as an outsider is that there's a predisposition generally from American Bitcoiners to imagine a world where the dollar exists maybe longer, because this is just a natural part of like, we all want to kind of imagine the future as in a comfortable way, in a way that reminds us of like how things are now. But like, you know, I'm living in an accelerating currency failure state. And so I think like having been in Australia recently, it's like everywhere else, like, so for 99% of my life, there was basically no discernible difference living in Canada and living in the United States. And now that's changed, and like our money is collapsing, and or collapsing much faster than yours is. And so for me, I think that personal lived now experience now is like, I have a hard time seeing how any of these currencies are going to withstand this escalating problem of life getting harder and harder. And like, to Robert's point, like, we're just living actually also through what might still be the early stages of like real virality of ideas. You know, like TikTok's only 5 years old, or however old it is. And there would be some tool that comes after TikTok, you know, where like, wait till people get Neuralink. We're going to be fucking one brain.
Bonkers land at that point.
Dude, that stuff wouldn't bother me if it was open source. If Neuralink and all this shit was open source, I'd be less perturbed by it.
Maybe it will be. Who knows?
Yeah, there's...
I will...
the reverse engineering, like, we see a lot with LLMs, like the DeepSeek moment, that you get all this investment into ChatGPT, and then a company comes along for 1/1000th of that cost and replicates it at feature parity. Probably do that with Neuralink and stuff too.
I can see that.
These things will come out and they'll work, and then someone's going to grab it and be like, oh, we can reverse this thing and strip out all that proprietary margin and just run it open source.
Yeah, so many of these ideas around like the dollar, I think it's like basically are just underpinned by like this feeling of like, it has to be this way because it's always been that way.
Exactly. The inertia.
Yeah.
I was hoping you were going to jump deeper on that Tartaria hook, dude.
I know.
You left me hanging. Now I'm the idiot who's going to get shit on in the comments.
I left you hanging there a little bit.
That's all good. I don't care. I have Bitcoin. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah, I'm trying to balance the super out there stuff with like.
It's just so fascinating to me. It really makes me, I like first time I saw anything about it was probably like 5 or 6, 7 years ago. And just the more I'm exposed to, the more I think about it. It breaks the brain, but I still like, I was standing at the cathedral in Prague with a couple of my buddies at, Bitcoin Prague last year. And I'm just like, people living in fucking shacks or whatever.
Dumping their shit out of a window.
They did not fucking build this stuff.
Yeah,
I don't
totally.
give a fuck. I'll just say it. I don't fucking believe it. But I don't believe it. And maybe I'm fucked in the head, but.
So let's jump in at Tartaria.
Tartaria.
I think actually on the outline, we've kind of hit almost everything that I've seen other than money as a memory, money as a mirror. So I have thought about that too. Money is such a trippy thing because it does all these time things, it does these energy things, does these information things and price signals, but it also acts as a form of memory in a way. Like again, if it's honest money, you have this social memory of who did what useful work, like who solved problems for other people historically profitably.
And the original, like the very original form of money were clay tablets from Sumeria that were actual pictorial recordings of stuff people did.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So you're getting that. What are you getting here? A semantic memory of things that were done episodically across time. And then the guy that's got the money, it's like, well, he's rich. The richness almost implies virtuosity because like he solved a lot of problems and intelligence because he did it profitably.
Yeah. I mean, and so then the future version of this, which is so cool, is that Bitcoin really is also capturing that information in a linear fashion.
Yeah.
Like, so we don't have a way to accurately distill that information today, but we might in the future.
So that time chain element will make our documenting of history more clear.
Yeah. I mean, it makes a continuous record of human activity possible. So this way, it's a monetary technology, it's an energy technology, it's an information technology, like you said at the outset, and it combines these things, and we're still really just talking about like how much the price is going to go up.
Yeah. And I think there's two different aspects here that we're relating to. So like one is like money as memory, which is, again, you see someone that has a lot of purchasing power. It's basically the stored social memory of that guy solved a lot of problems for other people profitably. But then there's this other thing Bitcoin's doing, which you just talked about, the time chain. You can write data to this thing or anchor data to it, and then you get like digital permanence. You get videos and photos and all this other distributed digital data, but it's written to this thing that can't be corrupted or censored or amended. Then you might get like I don't know how far this goes, but like if the whole world becomes much more surveyed, as I would say is a reasonable expectation, then all of that somehow gets written or anchored into Bitcoin in a way that it can't be censored, reversed, amended, all these things. And you get like this, we might have like permanent digital history where it's like, you don't need to wonder, what your great grandpa was doing. You just look it up on the damn thing and there it is.
Or have questions of like, wait, history is obviously written by the winners.
Yes.
Yeah, so you're not going to be asking yourself like, hey, did this actually happen that way?
Yeah.
And then if you combine it with Neuralink-like technologies and people are just like streaming their actual raw consciousness to some digital format and it's being stored permanently on Bitcoin's time, it's like, what is that? It gets so sci-fi bananas really quick.
Yeah, I mean, and we have hieroglyphs on pyramids. I mean, the beauty of this thing is that because we don't actually have to physically maintain it in the real world, it can endure forever.
Mm-hmm. Right.
How does it? I've never really thought about this. How does entropy affect information? That might be a dumb question, but I mean, Bitcoin is essentially just information. It is being stored on physical devices, so you do have some element of entropy. Yeah? No?
Yeah. So and this has actually been a point of confusion for many, myself included. And you talked about it earlier, right? There's the entropy of thermodynamics and there's the entropy of information theory. Mm-hmm. They're related, but they're not actually the same.
Mm-hmm.
And tell me if I'm saying this wrong, but the entropy of information theory is like how many binary digits is it necessary to successfully communicate this message?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the entropy of thermodynamics is more about the dissipative structure of energy in a closed system.
Mm-hmm.
And they're actually related somehow, like they're related through uncertainty. The metaphor that I found, this is in a book, Introduction to Information Theory, that I thought was really useful, is like imagine if you had a chamber of gas and then you partition the chamber such that, there's a wall down the middle of it. And so you put all the gas molecules on one side and the other side is a vacuum. Well, then you've actually lowered the entropy of that chamber because you know the location of the gas molecules, right? You've reduced the possible locations they could be in by 50%. So now you know they're all on one half of that thing. And now if you remove that wall, that partition rather, the rushing out of the gas to fill the entire chamber actually generates energy. So what are you doing here? When you increase the entropy, you're actually harnessing energy.
Mm-hmm.
So another interpretation I've heard of this is like entropy is useless energy and energy is useful entropy, something like that. Mm-hmm. Because it also gets weird when you're like, okay, well, I took a dump. That's entropy to me. But the fly is eating it. Well, that's energy for him, right? So there's this weird, it's like neither subjective nor objective, but it touches the mathematical domain, but it also touches the game theoretic informational domain. And I think it's just very strange. And I say all of this as a complete novice and just a guy that's read some books about it. I'm not a mathematician nor an information theorist. But I think it's very fascinating.
I'm in the same position, and I love the ideas, and that's about as far as I go too.
Yeah. But Bitcoin, I don't like, the one things I've found to be, because you can interpret information as surprise. So like when you receive a message, like it's only informative if it's telling you something you didn't know. If it's telling you something you already knew, then there's no information, right?
Well, it could be it could be a confirmation that does have value.
I
would say
I don't know if that's information though.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm drawing here on the book titled The Information by James Gleick. And that was, again, maybe this is just a metaphor or an analogy, but he described information as surprise, basically. So if I tell you something you already know, your name's Eric.
Yeah.
Has your storehouse of information changed in any way? Like the information didn't go up or down for you, right? But if I tell you something you don't know, which I don't know what you don't know, but
Quite a bit.
My middle name's John. Maybe you didn't know that.
I didn't actually.
Okay, there you go. Your information just went up. So, surprise, surprise. Bitcoin's interesting in that, I don't know, this terminology gets weird too, because I was going to say it's like perfect information, which was a concept we learned in Econ 101. This idea of that it's an ideal state of perfect competition where all market actors have access to the same information. There's no transaction costs. Everyone just knows the same things, basically. Mm-hmm. And in that world, profits are basically competed to zero. There's no arbitrage. But that's really good for generating productivity and, all the gains basically accrete to consumers. Obviously, that's impossible. Information does cost something to generate and to transmit and to maintain and all of these things. But Bitcoin seems to be something like the closest thing to perfect information we've ever had, right? We know with full confidence what its supply is every 10 minutes and will be all the way into the future of 2140. So we're back to that idea of something like something with as little surprise as possible is able to transmit as much surprise as possible.
I think too, it's
the idea of constancy again.
Well, and it's paying us to figure out how to become more energy efficient.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, money is an invention that really allows us to describe the relationship between value, energy, and time, right? Mm-hmm. And I think in the case of Bitcoin, it's like it's consuming information right now. And as it does this, it's creating a more robust and accurate model for what that information is. So like we were talking offline about price of a house in British Columbia in 2016 was 600 Bitcoin. Today it's 6 Bitcoin. It's like Bitcoin, as we're observing its price increase in dollars, what it's actually doing is consuming information about the relative value of stuff. Mm-hmm. And as it's growing and more people understand this, that model, as it consumes data, becomes more complete. This is what I think we're understanding this in a very primitive way by measuring like the number go up, but it's actually capturing a description to get back to this information theory, right?
Yeah.
It's describing the value of the world around us in a way that will eventually become uniform for humanity, right? This is the metric system of value.
Yes.
Where today we have 170 different forms of paper money in the world. So that's actually, I think it's like, we didn't talk about this earlier, but the fiat system is a system of systems. So like if you guys live in the US and I grew up in Canada, we have a very different experience of money as with somebody who grew up in Argentina. And so those are actually individual. So not only did we let central banks abstract gold by turning it into paper, we then let every political jurisdiction take their own crack at it.
Their own version.
And then we try to determine how those things relate to each other. Yeah. So this is a species level invention to standardize our understanding of that thought process. And that's happening in real time. Like we are living, to Jeff Booth's we're already living in that right now. Mm-hmm. It's just that there's still very, very few people who understand this process is well underway.
And how much entropy does that introduce, right? The fact that you have all this system of systems as you described it. I think the Forex market is some absurd number. It's like
quadrillion.
It's like $1 quadrillion a year, which is like 10x global GDP. And you're like, well, how can a market be 10x global GDP? It's like, because it's just this parasitic paper pushing reconciliation process of how do you reconcile all these systems on top of systems or adjacent to other systems.
Yeah.
So you don't need any of that. Like just strip all that away and everyone just speak one language, right?
Yeah.
We use one mathematics globally. Why would we use anything more than one money globally?
And this is that 100 monkeys idea, right? Bitcoin is synchronizing human consciousness, because what's going to happen is we're going to go from 170 monies to 7. Mm-hmm. Like it's not going to be a 0 to 1 thing, but like as this, it's like bringing an idea into a point of focus, and it will be funneled into the collective understanding in that way. Is how I think it's going to play out.
What kind of resistance do you think that we're dealing with there? Because I find that people who struggle the most with understanding Bitcoin are typically the most educated or successful in our current economic paradigm. And all of the individual building blocks that make up this grander macro thesis are indisputable, like housing prices as an example. But something happens there when you put it all together, it just breaks the brain. Some people can't grok it. It's that cognitive dissonance. What kind of transition do we have there with that level of resistance with people who are effectively incentivized to not understand it?
Yeah. I mean, I think it will greatly depend on where people are living. So if you guys have talked to Tony Yazbek from the Bitcoin Way, Tony was living in Lebanon when the Lebanese pound collapsed, and he has a very different experience from myself. And so I think as we start to see currency events, the ability for people to ignore Bitcoin is in those places is going to become harder. And, where those events are staved off further out, those, ordinary people are still going to observe you and me and Robert. Our lives are getting easier all the time, and we're experiencing more abundance and more enjoyment and all these things. And that's going to, I think, also be difficult for people to ignore. Mm-hmm. So if Saylor's right, if all these things, and we just continue to chug along, I think what those ideas don't consider are all the individual people and how they're going to interact with this phenomenon as they're experiencing it in real time. So, but yeah, I mean, the average life expectancy of a fiat currency outside of the Western world is 22 years. Like we are all just operating under this idea that money has been a certain way for the entire time we've been alive, so it will continue to be that way. And that's actually just not how it's been for most of human history. There's another one of these ideas that it can be very wild to imagine something being totally different from how it is now, but that doesn't make it impossible. It just means that it's going to be very different.
It's just outside the Overton window.
Yeah.
And that's what we're dealing with here. People... Nothing's ever happened like this, right? We had gold monetized over a 5,000 year course, basically. It wasn't fully globally monetized until probably the 1800s.
Yeah.
That took a long time.
I mean, ideas,
15 years into this thing.
Yeah, and ideas, the spreading rate of idea transmission is accelerating.
Yeah,
that's just factually true.
The liquidity of ideas is the term I use, but in digital age, they fly freely.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think about it I think, it's like email, right? There would be no way to go around to companies or countries or whoever and tell them no more email. We're using physical mail only. That idea is cooked, right? It's out of the bag. And it's also a good example because almost nobody understands how email actually works either.
Yeah.
They just know you hit send and it arrives in the other person's inbox, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, and we lived through this. We're all kind of the same age. When I started university, people were email was just becoming a thing. And I never even knew to check an email from my professor. And by the time I started my working career, it was an impossible thing. You couldn't have a job without having email be a regular part of your day. So if you think about that in Bitcoin terms, we might be at 1995 of email in Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. And if that's true, then by 2030, it's these objects in the rearview mirror are way closer than they appear.
Mm-hmm. That's well said. It's also an open source protocol, right? Is it SMTP that underpins? Yeah. So that's what Bitcoin is, right? It's just another open source protocol.
Yeah.
Instead of moving mail, you're moving purchasing power, which is a trip, but
in a borderless way. I was, thinking about this the other day. I don't know, even if in Bitcoin we appreciate the elegance of the innovation of having a form of money that is universal and truly borderless. Mm-hmm. And this is another one of those things where a lot of, the Western conversation around Bitcoin is people who've grown up in countries that don't really have stiff capital controls. If I really wanted to move to another country, I could probably get most of my money there. And so these things aren't necessarily so relevant to us, but a lot of the reason why maps look the way they do now is they've been designed in a way to keep the money inside, and it evolved out of these, monarchies like we were talking about earlier. Mm-hmm. So this system then we transitioned who was in charge, But the system has the entire time been designed to, keep us enslaved and keep the money exactly where it is. So now we have this tool that like really does enable us, if we're desperate enough, to leave with all the money you have in the world stored with 12 or 24 words in your head. And I think that is another thing that could fundamentally force a reimagination of what the state is. This is like there are lots of, James Dale and Ayn Rand and Bitcoiners are into this stuff too, right? It's like the modern state, in large part, it has a reason for thinking. The reason it thinks it needs to exist is to protect us, because historically that was what a lot of what the state was offering, right? Protecting your private property. But we've dematerialized private property into something that's almost impossible to confiscate, and as a result of that, we've also negated that. Thanks, but I don't really need that anymore.
I love the unconfiscatability, or the difficult in confiscating Bitcoin. I think that really changes that social memory function of money we were just talking about. Because the other problem is, like with gold, if someone did have a lot of money, you actually don't know, is that social memory or is that asocial memory, right? Did this guy, when I say asocial, like not social, did he go out and just coerce a lot of people and, kill people and steal all that gold? Mm-hmm. Or is this a social memory that he actually contributed useful work to society? You're not really sure on a gold standard because gold's physical and you can't know. But with Bitcoin, it seems much more likely that anyone that has acquired a lot of Bitcoin has done it consensually and non-coercively.
That's interesting.
And so then you start to see that, again, you're reunifying maybe wealth and virtuosity in a way. It's like, well, people that are actually wealthy on a Bitcoin standard have done something useful for other people because there was no other option to acquire it in an unuseful or asocial way.
Yeah, Eric was asking this question earlier about like what are the sweeping civilizational changes we could expect, and I think this is totally one of these waterfall ideas where if it all of a sudden just makes more sense for everybody to cooperate, and there's not much point in harming each other because you're not going to receive a financial benefit from it, that on its own is a pretty big thing. But then if you're really only going to get value for going out and producing value, then now you put those two things together and you really have something that looks very different from how things are now. Like,
yes.
Yeah.
One of my highest health priorities is keeping my brain in top shape. To take care of my brain power, I do many things, such as striving to read, write, exercise, and meditate daily. One of the latest tools in my brain power toolkit is MindLab Pro. MindLab Pro is a nootropic supplement that is scientifically proven to enhance your brain power. When I take MindLab Pro, my mind feels like it has a better grip on the world, my thinking is more lucid, and the articulation of my speech is radically improved. MindLab Pro has been tested in rigorous, double-blind, placebo-controlled human trials and has been proven to enhance brain power for users in every age group. MindLab Pro is an advanced formulation of 11 nootropic ingredients and is backed by research from over 1,400 human trials conducted over the past 32 years. So if you're looking to enhance your brain power, MindLab Pro is an excellent solution. Go to mindlabpro.com/breedlove to start enhancing your brain power today. Again, that's mindlabpro.com/breedlove. Knowing when to buy Bitcoin can feel complicated, and knowing how much to buy can be overwhelming, and getting started can be a headache, but it doesn't have to be. That's exactly why I recommend Coinbits, because it solves these major blockers and it's the easiest way to buy Bitcoin. With Coinbits' Round Ups feature, you can automatically convert your spare change into Bitcoin while you shop. For example, when you buy a coffee for $3.50, the extra 50 cents is rounded up and it goes straight into Bitcoin. Here's why that's a huge win for you, because you don't have to be a tech wizard or try to time the market just right with Bitcoin. With Coinbits Roundups, you simply set it, shop, and stack sats. And you can set this up in under 2 minutes. Just visit the website, connect your card, and boom, you're buying a little Bitcoin every time you spend money. So stop wasting your time with complicated exchanges or confusing shitcoin apps. Coinbits simplifies your Bitcoin savings strategy. So go to coinbits.app/breedlove. Again, that's coinbits.app/breedlove.
There's a really ironic element that's kind of popped into my head a couple times during this conversation, that the overlords, if you will, that want us to own nothing and be happy and drive us into like this one world government, this globalization movement. Interestingly enough, and it's kind of ironic, Bitcoin is doing that. It is creating this global movement, this global free market, this rules without rulers that we can all adhere to, and it's incentivizing people to not hoard a bunch of physical stuff.
Like I was saying earlier, just not in the way that they thought. You know, I think it's like, be careful what you wish for. Bitcoin is, and it's like
the bottom-up version of that.
Yeah.
It feels like we've skipped timelines. Do you ever think about the multiverse and in quantum physics and like, you know, are we in some collective consciousness as Bitcoiners moving one direction and people that are, I don't know, stuck in the 3D or however you'd want to phrase that, moving in another direction, and we're kind of sucking people in with us into this new timeline? Because it feels to me like we have skipped timelines. Like there are times where I'm just like, wow, I'm really shocked that things are unfolding the way that they are. But then in hindsight, it seems pretty obvious. Like if you have this monetary protocol that's inviolable, then the world is going to organize itself around it, you know?
Another one of my favorite movies is a movie called Arrival. It's Amy Adams. It's a movie, it's maybe 10 years old.
Movie.
Came out, and it's aliens arrive on Earth, and a team of scientists are dispatched to interact with them, and they are trying to get a transmission from these aliens. And the movie is about the idea that the technology they're trying to impart on humanity is their language. And what their language does for somebody who learns it is it helps them understand that time is not linear. And this may ruin the movie for anybody who hasn't watched it, but maybe I'll stop there. So to answer your question.
No, you can ruin it.
Okay.
Here's your spoiler alert.
So at this moment, she is able to use the language and communicate with her a version of herself in the past to change the outcome of a catastrophe that was about to happen. And my thought is on multiverse and the future is I 100% believe the hyper-Bitcoinized future already exists. And when we are old enough to see it, it will, looking backwards, seem obvious. So we are already right now bringing that reality forward, like into the present moment. We're moving there by doing stuff like this, by, everything that's happening in Bitcoin. We are just looking at it like in this incredibly short time frame, trying to determine whether or not it's working or not.
It's like watching the paint dry.
Right. But like every single person that comes online is like a node in the network, in the consciousness of it.
Mm-hmm.
And we are moving towards that 99 Monkeys moment. And so I think like that future, it already exists. And we just happen to be experiencing it play out in real time.
Yeah, it's like we're tuning our consciousness to something that has very little distortion or noise in the signal. I think about what things have humans agreed upon for all of known history.
Yeah.
We haven't ever agreed upon something at scale with such clarity. There's no disputing the blockchain. Here's the 21 million and here's every transaction that's ever happened. We agree upon that it's crystal clear. I think that the closest thing that we've had before Bitcoin was like religion, but there's all these different versions of it. So there's like distortion, there's noise. And so I think that it's like,
I'd go with mathematics there.
Mathematics.
Arabic numerals are the closest predecessor to Bitcoin.
That makes sense. And so we've tethered our economic system to indisputable mathematics.
Absolutes in general,
Absolutes.
right? Also, the speed of light is an absolute. All of in the standard units of measurement, right? The kilogram, the meter, the mile, not the mile. Those are all derived from the speed of light. So we have found absolutes in nature and then sort of built systems around them. But that's where Bitcoin's very interesting. It's like the discovery of a new absolute.
And we have, because of all these things that we erect on top of the way money works, Like the world works just fine with imperial and metric measurements. Like that's fine. Neither of them change. So we can switch back and forth and it makes sense. In this post-Bitcoin world, we're not only agreeing on a truth, we are removing all of this like nonsense, all of the confusing aspects of the things that don't work. And so that is the thing I think that really creates, the same way I was saying earlier that an individual person can experience a peace of mind. In my book, I say the Dao of Bitcoin is a sense of tranquility that accompanies a comprehension of energy money. And that collective consciousness it works the same way. So if we all understand it, we all experience a sense of tranquility. And what happens in that moment is exactly the same thing we were talking about for an individual. So now all of a sudden, enough of us just stop and take a deep breath and take a look at what we're actually doing and have the time to think about whether or not any of it makes sense. And this is where I think, it's like people don't stop understanding Bitcoin. There are very few people who truly got it and then decided it was stupid. And so that just means that all we need to do is collect more and more people. And that's the part of it that's unstoppable. Like I was saying earlier, everybody wants a better tomorrow. Everybody wants life to get easier. And none of these things, like Bitcoin has no recruitment barriers for the really important things. And so it's a dissemination bottleneck right now that we're in the very early stages of.
Yeah, that's fair to say it that way. And it's been said to me before, there's only a certain throughput that a profound idea can propagate through the minds of men. Like it takes time for people to realize this thing, and they often need to experience some form of pain. They need to experience the problem before you can identify the solution. Because, if I just articulate the solution to you and you don't have the problem, you're not going to care, right? Something you said way earlier that I think maybe ties into what we're talking about here, this idea of just agreements really being a defining feature of being human. So far as I know, there's not too many animals that make agreements. I mean, they have like pseudo agreements, like pecking orders and things like that. But we make, we use explicit symbols like language to make explicit agreements with one another about who we are, what we'll do over time, what you can trust me to do or what I'm contracting myself to do. We write contracts with these things. We write declarations of independence with these things. Now we write software with these points of agreement. And it's true both in natural language. It's also true in mathematics. And, these are basically points of consensus or also points of common unity, right? That we all have, where we get the word community, right? We can build communities with language, with mathematics, but without those things, good luck, right? You're just gonna have a bunch of two-legged monkeys running around, not being able to interface properly. And so Bitcoin's like this crazy, indisputable agreement or something. Like it is, you were fishing for it earlier. It's like, well, we had religion and like, sure, if we're all Christian and we all believe in God, it's like, well, we're close to having a consensus, I guess, depending on how you define God, which is a notoriously difficult problem. We get a little bit better with something like mathematics. It's like, okay, this is pretty hard to argue with the number 0 or calculus or whatever the thing may be. But Bitcoin takes it to like, you could still, wokeists still will tell you 2 + 2 = 5. So you don't have to subscribe to that consensus point. But with Bitcoin, it's like, you can't not. I mean, you can, I guess. You could say Bitcoin's bullshit, I'm not going to buy it. It's like, well, there goes your bloodline.
Yeah,
right?
After all those Darwinism.
Are toast, then you're just left with the common unity of everyone under 21 million. And that is like truly mind-blowing. If agreements are this thing that's essential to our humanity, then Bitcoin's like taking our humanity to the next level.
Yeah, and Bitcoin, the existence of Bitcoin negates all of the other weaker agreements.
Yeah.
So this is where you can't have these systems where other people will acknowledge trying to use systems of measurement that don't make any sense. It goes against consensus.
It'll probably blow out all the other nonsense agreements, demagogues have tried to create.
Yeah.
From each according to their ability to each according to their need. Someone's going to say, fuck you, 21 million. The agreement is the trust minimized agreement. You don't need to trust someone's promise about what they're going to do in the future. It's like that point's already been established.
Yeah.
It's like, what do they say? talk is cheap, let your money talk for you kind of thing.
I say this in the book. I think that like we haven't had a reasonable basis for the expectation that things make sense, because we live in a world like fundamentally that just, it doesn't not make sense. We use these sense-making apparatuses that are flawed. And so Bitcoin, I think among other things it provides is like, okay, if we have an expectation that this thing is sensical, then how does your political strategy, like we can then go from there and expect that everything else also makes sense.
Interesting.
And without it,
right.
we can't. We don't really have a basis for that type of demand. But it's like, the helicopter money, giving out like all of these ideas, okay, in the infinite money world, we do a ton of things that we don't have the ability to question.
Yeah.
But that just can't continue. It'd be like, okay, so you're going to give everybody 1,000 sats. Where's that money coming from?
Exactly. Yeah, you have to conform to reality.
Yeah.
The Bitcoin standard.
Yeah.
Well, and it's imposing that reality.
It is imposing it.
There's no escaping it.
Yeah. And this is, I think, because I imagine this Bitcoin bonds this relationship between value and time with energy, where in the world of paper money, it's an imaginary representation. It's not real, but the process of consuming energy and time to turn it into money, which is what Bitcoin is, right? I have this interest in, if you look at the physical forms of money that have evolved over human history, and we've kind of looked around the natural world to find stuff that we could represent as value in time. Seashells, clay tablets, gold, and paper. And it's like there's something about the substances that we chose that then became a reflection of the enduring nature of that form of money. So like paper is this, degradable thing that is really easy to produce, and gold is basically like the closest thing to an immortal money that we have. And then you kind of have everything in the middle, and the different forms of money almost took on the physical characteristics that they're imbued with. And now
so you're saying like we're going to build degradable, quick societies on paper money, but then enduring, beautiful societies on gold money. Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, and now this, money that's pure information and energy and time are the input components to make a Bitcoin, right? It's and it's also like figurative energy and time. It's the miners and node runners that expend their human energy, creating this this is like the fascinating thing about the Bitcoin network is that it's the first form of money we have that is, decentralize the creation of the money system itself. So it's like it's not my idea that it's like an organism. It's like a Kardashev scale technology for uniting people around a single thing that makes sense.
Love it. It's interesting to me too that it kind of collapses the chasm between subjective and objective. If we consider what is objective to be the thing that is most independent of anyone's opinion or most permanent, we'd say something like the freezing point of water is 0 degrees. That's because anyone that does it anywhere, it always seems to be true. And so you've got this very high degree objectivity of Bitcoin and its 21 millionness. But then there's also the subjectivity that it's, money is just whatever anyone chooses it to be. But we all end up orienting what is most true. And so I wonder, I don't know, that's just, for me, it's taken me deeper into language where I think pre-Bitcoin, I was another one of those people that thought the whole world was either subjective or objective. There are objective facts and there's subjective opinions. But Bitcoin kind of takes you on this orthogonal thing. And you're like, wait a minute, those are just categorical structures we were using, which I guess gets into the point of was Bitcoin discovered or invented, or what is it? Is it both? The ancient Greeks used that term inventio, which meant both actually. It's like discovered and invented. Maybe that was it. How does this all relate to Taoism though? Because even that, the yin and the yang, right? The subjective and the objective, and the Dao is neither one. It's somehow the interface between the two. How does that relate to Bitcoin?
Yeah, there's kind of like, I think with Taoism, sort of two pieces. One is the personal experience that comes with studying and being in relationship with the Dao. And then there's kind of like the more like literal, how would Bitcoin relate to Taoist ideas? The first part was a lot of what we've already been talking about the whole time, right? And Taoism really is about achieving a relationship with the natural little flow of energy and events and things that are unfolding around you in our lives at all times, and just being as present with them as possible. And so I think that Bitcoin is the form of money that best endows us with the capacity to live in an alignment with the Dao. And be
nice alliteration there.
Oh,
Endows us with the ability to live in the Dao. I like that.
And then, I think, so the Tao Te Ching was written originally as a manuscript to help reimagine governance. And they had problems in the Warring States period in early China that were not that different than what's happening right now. And China also, like, interestingly, was, early to the party with paper money, hyperinflation. These are things that...
That's right.
Yeah.
The first paper money was in China.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I think that Bitcoin, in Taoism, is the idea that it's a central force of creation. And from that thing, this is just the nature of the physical universe around us, that everything is kind of, we operate in a self-correcting system. And the underlying principle of that system is that everything is abundant. And so for that reason, you just need to really tap into that system, and you can enjoy all of the actual reality of what this thing is. And so we've been birthed into a different system that's made up, that's been imposed on top of the way things actually operate. Taoism's in Taoism, they also believe that everything we would possibly need to enjoy everything that's in front of us comes from the Tao and is available for us. So Bitcoin would be just as true. And this idea that this system is self-correcting, I think that Bitcoin is an idea that, of course, it would emerge naturally as a result of the previous invention of central banking and mechanical clocks. This is the self-correcting system in action, producing a solution that in Taoism, there's a principle of reversionism. Is the idea that, like, everything returns to the way it's supposed to be, to harmony, to the way of oneness. And I believe this to be true. And I think that Bitcoin, this is also why I think this Bitcoin future is unstoppable, because we are meant to live together in harmony. And this, what is required for that to happen is the end of a money system where the underlying principle is theft. Because in the theft system, we are all encouraged to go out and steal from each other, and not in a malicious way. This is just how it works. But in the Bitcoin system, we all have this ability to store our own energy and time, so we don't need to steal other people's. And even like mortgages, right? Like, you think about selling a house to somebody so that they can hope it appreciates, so that they can sell it to somebody else. That's somebody's life energy. If I'm committing 30 years of my life to buy something from you, you're monetizing my life. And this is an energetic exchange that we all make with each other, all that this is another agreement, right? So Bitcoin presents a foundation for a new set of agreements where we stop stealing from each other, we're incented to work together, and most importantly, nobody is in charge or has a disproportionate amount of control over the thing that we use as this foundational thing in society. And I think that we think it has to be this way. They had to standardize money because there were so many problems with collapsing currencies and counterfeiting and all this stuff. Your point earlier, these are ideas that were good innovations for the time. Everything has a life cycle in Taoism, a season, spring, summer, winter, like, everything comes to an end because everything returns to source. Everything returns back to creation. So, we should be moving to the end of the idea that someone else is going to tell us what money is, because we have within us the capacity to understand and come to an agreement on something that is more sensible. And I think once that's done, you can't do both. So then once that's happened, you can't help but start to experience all the other things that just happen to be in alignment with Taoist ideas. And the idea that life is easier when you acknowledge how things actually are and just try to operate in harmony with how things fundamentally work.
Love it.
Yeah, nature is healing. It made me think of something that I think I heard you say, Robert. It's like Bitcoin is an emiological response from a toxicity in the lifeblood of the marketplace. Or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's been a big problem created through fiat money, and when people, the organism, the social organism feels enough pain, the immune system fights back. And I mean, that's in Satoshi's original writings, right? It's like Chancellor on verge of second bailout of banks. That was the express purpose of Satoshi and the Genesis block for the reason of Bitcoin's existence, is to stop this nonsense. It's in the white paper, et cetera. And
we're talking about architecture, right? I think another thing to think about, we experience, like, our human lives are a certain length of time. And so we capture whatever's happening in a lifetime, and we measure things by what we're going to personally get to experience. But if you zoom out and think about things that are happening that are beyond our lifetimes, this cyclical nature of all things that is a core idea in Taoism is totally true of civilizations too. Like, it's not up only, continuous forward progress. There'll be light times and dark times, good times and bad times. We've got into this weird place where we just QE over recessions, and even like the idea of a recession is a really bad idea, but that would be a totally natural cleansing, and all these zombie companies should be dying. But like much longer time frames. I think we make a mistake often thinking that we're living in a high time because there's all kinds of technological innovation happening right now, and we think this is the most advanced we've ever been. But I think that period of the long 19th century where we were building the beautiful buildings and writing incredible symphonies might have actually been a high time. And we're actually at a trough right now and getting ready for something really beautiful, which is coming in the future.
Yeah, under some sort of spell too. It's this like optical illusion. Like you were talking about houses earlier. You're going to sell a house to somebody. They're going to buy it with the expectation that's going to be worth more. In reality, the house in real terms is worth less.
Yeah.
And people can't see that. It's this optical illusion. And Bitcoin isn't actually going up in value. It's just measuring the fact that everything else is going down in value.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's both, actually. It's both. I mean, there's new aggregate demand for it because everything is falling apart. But it's also, if you're denominating in dollars, well, the dollar is also getting depreciated. So not only is, again, your frame of reference on Bitcoin, which is the dollar, is becoming decremented over time, but also there's new demand and new cohorts of people buying and holding Bitcoin, more reservation demand for it.
Until we're pricing everything in Bitcoin.
They're linked.
Sorry.
No, I'm saying they're linked, right? Like as the house is burning down, well, the price of that fire insurance goes up, right?
Yeah.
More people want it.
Yeah, I think until everything is priced in Bitcoin, we still think of Bitcoin as being something that has a price. And that will one day end. So until that happens, Bitcoin is going up because it's still gathering more information, and it itself has a price. But at some point, we'll just start talking about the price of Bitcoin, and we'll start talking about what things cost in Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think of that discovery process as like the great demonetization as Bitcoin is sucking all this value that's stored up in other things. At some point, we'll have made it past that point where but Bitcoin will still be the best thing to store your time and energy in after we've made it to the other side of this.
It will be the only thing.
Great demonetization.
It's the information required to describe a system state.
Yes.
And when it has sufficient information, the system can be described.
So you think it's truly unstoppable? You don't have moments of ever being like, oh, it's just going to fall apart?
I mean, I think it's just like unknown. Like we'd totally have to be like, I think it's like super vigilant. And there are people who know way more than I do about the technical considerations of, version of 30 of core, like the things that are hot buttons right now. But the idea itself, I think, is once that idea is out of the bag, yeah, you're
really betting on human ingenuity, right? Because it actually is. It's very much like a language, right? It's like, are you going to bet that English is going to be a persistent language into the future? It's like, well, there's a lot of things that go into that, but this is where like natural language is a useful metaphor, but I think mathematics is better. It's like, okay, English could go out of existence at some point, right? If we had a certain war or whatever demographic change, but something like the Hindu-Arabic numeral system, I can't imagine how that could ever go out of existence, right? Unless we invented new mathematics, which
Terrence Howard's working on it.
He
is.
There are, and there are so many things. You have to be maybe pretty far down specific niches to understand the level of ingenuity. I had a conversation with Bob Burnett, who's one of my favorite people to listen to in the space, talking about how he thinks that the incentives behind mining is going to evolve. Like people are worried about what happens when block rewards become so small that there's no incentive for miners anymore. And he's imagining a world where, Syria tries to get 1% of the hash rate so that they can guarantee that the Syrian transactions, so that they can have access to the global financial system. And so we're still trying to imagine solutions to future problems based on the things that are happening now.
Right.
Without really properly understanding that like it's going to look a lot different. And as the interests of different types of actors, which we are even seeing now with like, strategy has introduced a type of buyer into the market that I think is going to fundamentally change the behavior of how the kinds of price actions we see. And just wait until like countries start to do this too. Like they're not going to have a choice. I think it's like, again, there's a mental model here that assumes there's going to be 170 currencies in 30 years.
That's right.
Which I don't think can happen.
I agree completely.
Yeah.
So there's a very special place called the farm at Okefenokee. It's a 1,000 acre regenerative farm community about 45 minutes northwest of Jacksonville, Florida. The farm is a completely off-grid community. It has total food, water, and energy independence. Everything on the farm is 100% organic, and it even features wild boar and bear hunting. The farm at Okefenokee is right next to the Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge, where you can do camping and canoeing tours. So if you're like me and you're interested in the self-sovereign lifestyle, then you can get your own lot on the farm at Okefenokee if you tell them that I sent you. Once you get a lot, you can build one of 3 custom cabin options. So if you value freedom, self-sovereignty, and living in touch with nature, then join me and my family. We have lot number 21, and we're going to be building a cabin there starting December 2025. To learn more about the farm at Okefenokee, go to okefarm.com and make sure to tell them that I sent you. If you're a Bitcoiner, you need the Orange Pill app. It's where you can connect with other sovereign individuals locally and globally. It's great for when you travel, to meet local Bitcoiners, to go to Bitcoin meetups, and to find local merchants that accept sats. No distractions, no noise, just real Bitcoiners. So download the Orange Pill app today and find your local Bitcoin tribe. It says something, I don't know what book this was in, but it's something like the finger that points at the moon is not the moon. The Dao, which we call the Dao, is not the Dao.
Yeah.
So kind of emphasizes the representational nature of language, you know, that, we can't, again, we can never fully map the territory of reality in words alone. And I think this is something that very well characterizes the journey into Bitcoin as well. I think like that's what we talk about on the show all the time: the definitions of words, the etymology.
Yeah.
Trying to describe things in a lot of different way. The primacy of human action actually over words. And so, what is there another connection there, maybe between Taoism and Bitcoin?
So, in that verse, there's a verse, and I don't know it by heart, but this idea that actually the act of creating a map, as soon as you have done that, you have made a permanent record of something that is impermanent.
Mm-hmm.
So the minute your map is done, it's inaccurate, right? And so
because you've represented something that has now changed.
Yes.
Yeah. What is it? No man steps into the same river twice. It's not the same river. It's not the same man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is kind of where I think, we were talking about money as a map earlier, and this is true. It's our map is changing all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Taoism, there's the notion of impermanence is a really important thing. And I think that we, again, some of these financial stresses that take us out of the present moment are exacerbated by the problem of impermanent money, because we then are forced into a hamster wheel that has in its nature built into it that it gets harder and harder to spin.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is one of those things where if we remove that problem, we're all going to die. Like all of us have an amount of time on here that will come to an end, and everything else will have its own end too. I think that, so more importantly, it would be great if our money didn't have that same problem.
Right.
And if it didn't, we could think about the time that we do have a lot differently.
We're kind of back to entropy again, right? Like we're going to contend with entropy no matter what, but we don't need to increase the entropy we're dealing with by fucking up our own money.
Totally.
It's just like if we change the definitions of words every day constantly, like the language is already helping you deal with entropy by connect with people to solve bigger problems. But then if you start distorting the meanings of words, like wokeism does, you introduce more entropy to that channel and it works less effectively.
Yeah.
So it's very self-destructive, self-sabotaging in that way.
Yeah.
But we can't get out of that trap because humans don't all think like that. So there's always some opportunists that will take advantage of it to serve their own short-run self-interest at the expense of the long-run humanitarian benefit. So we need Bitcoin, basically.
Totally. We need an external system that prevents people from having their own idea and the ability to execute that idea. Like what we don't need is Ethereum. It's
ask Tom Lee.
Yeah.
So when did you write your book? You got into Bitcoin in 2020, and you wrote a book, The Dao of Bitcoin. I don't think we formally brought that up.
Yeah. I wrote Dao of Bitcoin, published it originally in the spring of 2024. I'm working hard on a second edition right now. It's going to be quite a bit different. It's a lot of what we've talked about today. So I had been kind of like really studying Taoism for kind of 20 years. It was another one of those things where got interested in Bitcoin and immediately started thinking about the parallels and a conversation about it. And I was honestly kind of shocked that that book hadn't been written already, because there's like a Dao of Everything book, like just stuff. It's like the
Dao of Poo. I really
the
like
Dao of Poo.
Yeah,
Totally.
yeah.
And they're just
and the Dao of Physics. I think that's on the shelf over here.
It's one of my favorite books. Yeah. Kafka. And the great thing about Taoism is like it's not exclusionary. It doesn't require you to abandon a religion that you may already be, a participant of. They're just, it's a way of thinking and being that's sort of philosophical, and I wouldn't even say it's religious.
Yeah, I've heard it either called the religion of flow or the philosophy of flow.
Yeah.
And I think in the East, actually, the line between religion and philosophy is a bit more blurry than it is in the West.
Yeah,
but just I read a lot of it when I was younger, and it just very refreshing in a way. It's just telling you how things are. You mentioned impermanence, which is a big feature of it, flow, constant change, acceptance.
Yeah, living simply, I think this is another thing that like one of my favorite Bitcoin quotes is, life is simpler when money works better. And I think this is even true for people. I'm 45 and money was working a lot better in the 80s and life was a lot simpler. People only consume the news kind of once a day. It's like all these things have just changed. And so, so the book came out last spring and hopefully the second edition should be out like maybe October if everything goes well.
Amazing. Well, we'll definitely link to that in the show notes for you. I don't know if we have any other questions or.
Yeah, I want to dig a little further because I think I was flying back from Miami in March and I listened to the podcast you did with Ben Weirman. And you guys talked about Tartaria for like 30, 45 minutes. So what do you know or believe about who built these cathedrals, and do you think that that's just some far-fetched, outlandish bullshit story, or what? I mean, what are your
what
thoughts
is
on that?
Tartaria? Because I don't really know.
So that's,
Okay. Tartaria is a rabbit hole that if you're interested, you can check out that episode with Ben. It's an idea that supposes that history is not a little bit different than what we've been taught, but a lot different. And it came onto my radar originally because of my interest in these buildings. And one of these buildings actually exists in the city that I'm from, Edmonton, Canada. There's a beautiful building there, the provincial legislature, and that building is a identical copy of the state capitol building in Montana and the state capitol building in Iowa and St. Paul's Cathedral in London. And they're all sort of thought to be kind of around the same age. Edmonton's a weird one because it's one of the most inhospitable places in the world. And at the time that building is said to have been built, it was like a one-horse town with kind of 15,000 people who would have been really just struggling to survive. And then they just up and decided to build this like really incredible building. And so digging into these buildings, and so these buildings are everywhere. They're all over the US. They're all over Argentina, Japan. It's actually a style of architecture that is all over the world. And
what would it be called? Gothic, or there's a term for it?
Yeah, I think they would fall into a few different names. There's kind of like the Baroque period, some Gothic, Victorian kind of. So these buildings are just thought to have all kind of been built during that time in the 18th century, but a lot of them have like very difficult to believe construction timelines. We still have the information about when those buildings were said to have been built. And, one of the weird ones would be like the state capitol building in Iowa, which I think there was like 3,000 people in the entire state of Iowa when they said they built it. And they say they knocked that building out in 1840, I think, in like 2 or 3 years. And it's like, 50,000 tons of granite. Like they're really insane because we also have all the measurements.
What
of like
this is
how
the
many
state capitol in Iowa?
Yeah,
So
all of these state capitol buildings are really interesting, and because we stare at them all the time, and just kind of assume what we've been told is true, but the precision in how they were built and the materials required to build them, and the mathematics. So to build buildings that heavy takes a lot of preparation and thought, and master masons and master architects. And, so where did all these people train? Where did all the architects train? And so actually you can Wikipedia any of these things and there will be a blurb about these builders, and often the builders are...
That's the state capitol.
The builders
Wow.
are...
Dude, there's stuff like this all over the world. Oslo,
Interesting.
Prague.
Yeah,
I
they're
mean,
everywhere.
it's
Yeah,
and then the World Fair.
Yeah, so the builders are often attributed to have done 50 of these buildings in 30 years. And they started at 20 with no formal training. So the suggestion, I don't know about that one specifically, but some of them will say, yeah, George Wilson built that. It was his first building. He was 20. And it's like, okay.
How good was the gold standard?
Totally. Yeah.
Hard money versus limp money. Dude.
Yeah, wow.
So to make a long story short, the idea behind Tartaria is that there are a lot of older maps that show a country called Tartaria in what is modern day Russia
or civilization or country.
Yeah. And maps, it's funny we're talking about maps. Maps had to be accurate. In like nautical times, the map maker's career hinged on the accuracy of a map. So it's odd that there are many maps that reference this country or civilization, and our current history books have no record of it. And so the theory is that this architecture that's found all over the world is actually indicative of that culture, which has been entirely removed from history. And the idea is, the problem is these buildings potentially predate, Christopher Columbus or, so that history is a lot different.
Wow. And what's the motive there?
So
put us all into this energy sucking matrix that we're going to keep us on a grid.
Where I first got interested in it and why I think it's interesting is we've been told the cathedrals are just places of worship. And the suggestion is that embedded in a lot of these architectural patterns are their energy machines. And so the Duomo in Milan would be one of these. And like the organ was actually like a critical component in a machine that could have been for sound healing or for actual atmospheric energy harvesting. So the domes and the state capitol buildings often have like a spire on the top that might have something that's empty in the middle now, like a pedestal sort of thing. And there's actually old drawings where they have like machinery. There's something in there that's been removed. And, so uncoincidentally, those buildings today are all government buildings. The government took all those buildings, potentially took all the tech out.
And the destruction of bells.
And the bells. Yeah, bells are another piece of it. And so the idea is that this society has been wiped because they had figured out how to use architecture to harvest free electricity from the atmosphere for everyone. Wow. And there's a lot there. So
it's a fun one. I brought it up to you a couple of times. It's definitely one of these things when you first see it, and like I follow some Twitter pages. It's like, I get things that fly across my feed. At first you're like, yeah, okay, that's interesting and whatever. The more I've been thinking about it, the more I've kind of come to a place where I'm like, I don't know if what's true or not. Like it's just kind of fractured my belief set entirely. Like,
it's plausible.
There is like an impossible. Many of these buildings have timelines that are impossible, even to recent. Like Ben and I talked about. The Empire State Building was said to have been completed in 400 days. 400 days.
Wow.
That's the official story.
403 days, I think. But
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you look at pictures of the World Fair from
Just think about that for a second. I mean, in the Empire State Building, I finished. Like, it is immaculate on the inside. The finishings. In addition to like the size of the building it is and whatever. Like,
so that would have meant that, according to this theory, that the Empire State Building existed before we even arrived, we being Christopher Columbus arrived in the United States.
So maybe not all those buildings are that old, but certainly some of them. So some of these old maps have a city called Chilaga that is on exactly where Chicago is now. That is like a Chinese map from 1400 or something. And yeah.
Trippy.
Yeah. I think
it's a fun rabbit hole, I will say.
Wow.
Yeah. It's an interesting idea. I think Bitcoin fixes the idea that history itself could be corrupted. So this is a really cool thing that maybe not most Bitcoiners are excited about.
And after going through the past 5 years and seeing all the distortion in the current news cycle, it gives me a lot more pause when I hear an idea like that. I'm like, well, maybe. If it's so distorted over the past 5 years, how distorted is it over the past several hundred?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, people can disagree about things that have happened while we've been alive. Imagine how easy it is to just go back slightly further.
Wow. Well, hope we get some of that free energy harvesting, because that would be really good for the Bitcoin price.
Well, the hash rate will expose it. You know, I think if the government's hiding some energy technology in Area 51 or whatever, some diabolical overlords reset history and gave us this lie, like they are heavily incentivized to figure out how to use that to mine Bitcoin, and it would show up in the hash rate.
Yeah. And then if that goes into industrial use, the purchasing power would absolutely explode, because free energy, is there a bigger increase to productivity than that? Even if it's not free, if it is near zero cost.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be 0 point. We could just be harnessing it. Like, I don't know, it's common knowledge. You could get on any YouTube, a history channel, whatever. Tesla made a device that was harnessing electricity from the ether, and it got destroyed. They took all his work. He died poor.
Yeah, I mean, that's even an interesting one. Like, there are only 3 photos of Tesla.
Really?
And there's no video of him. And he lived in a time, we have lots of video of Albert Einstein. And I've seen it suggested that Tesla might not have been a real person.
Interesting.
And like there's more people than just Tesla in the past that this is thought of. But it's very odd for a person of his significance that there would be, and everyone only sees the 3 photos. There's one when he's old. There's one where he's kind of like, it's like a professional portrait. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then, gosh, there's just endless rabbit holes. Another one's the moon landing. It's like you realize that the moon landing was very
You're really going for it now,
probabilistically fake. It just starts. It's one of these things where you just have this cascading ripple effect of like, well, what is real?
That one seems pretty fake to me.
Yeah.
I don't think we could do it today.
Yeah. No, I think like this is where it's cool is like, can we get to a place where as a civilization, we have a baseline expectation that things make sense?
A true record of history. That would be a nice start, right?
Yeah, that'd be a big deal. I find it insulting thinking about the pyramids or these cathedrals built by people who
didn't know
walking over piles of shit in their muddy streets.
Totally.
It's
Hadn't
preposterous.
solved the problem of toilet paper, but they could. It's just like totally insane.
Well, this has been awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming to Miami to talk to us. The Dao of Bitcoin is the book, which we will link to in the show notes. Do you have any closing words of wisdom, or please let people know where they can find you on the internet?
For sure. Thanks. And thanks again for the invitation, fellas. It's been my genuine pleasure to be here. We talked a little bit about Block Rewards, the software. We are innovating how to pay people in Bitcoin and intending to be launched in the US later this year. And so that's blockrewards.com. Depending on when this airs, it's still blockrewards.ca today. You can catch me on Twitter. My handle's Lantern Bitcoin, and on LinkedIn. I'm active on there as well.
Awesome, brother. Thank you so much.
Yeah, man. It's been fun.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, click here to find more just like it, and here to find our most recent episode. Also, make sure to like this video to help shine light on the corruption of money, and be sure to subscribe to this channel to stay connected.